So just, you need to read this
Thank you very much.
without the Concord-Carlisle.
Okay, Concord School Committee comes to order, and the Concord-Carlisle School Committee and the will enter into executive session under Purpose 3 of the Open Meeting Law to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation. If an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and under Purpose 2 of the Open Meeting Law, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel, and return to open session at approximately 6:30 p.m.
Second. Moved.
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
It's a roll call.
Right, Rainey, aye.
Booth, aye.
Vote aye, since I know what you're.
Johnston, aye.
What are we voting on?
To go into
No, we can
executive
do
That was just
session.
Concord.
Okay.
We might as well do both.
Yeah, we did that.
Okay.
You want to do,
Thank you, I'm so
I'll bring
sorry.
the regional committee meeting to order, Concord-Carlisle Regional Committee meeting to order. The Concord-Carlisle Regional School Committee will enter into executive session under Purpose 3 of the Open Meeting Law to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation. If an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and under Purpose 2 of the Open Meeting Law to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel and to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel, and return to open session at approximately 6:30 p.m. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll vote.
Odell, aye.
Johnston, aye.
Vote aye.
Rainey, aye.
Booth, aye.
Court, the principals are going to come down and play with that while we go. Thank you.
Bring the Concord School Committee meeting to order. Please know we're being recorded.
And I'll bring the Concord School Committee meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. It's always fun to have a crowd here. Glad you're here. Sorry for the delay. We apologize. Executive session went a little longer than planned, but we will jump right in now. Are there any public comments? Do we have any public comments? Okay. Then we'll go to reading of the minutes. Just one from May 14th, which was joint.
Yeah, we had open session 5/14/19, and we had executive session 5/28/19, Region and Concord. Any kind of motion to accept the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
For both?
For both.
For both.
And any discussion?
Yeah, I just had, sorry, Erin, I had one correction that I didn't get to you, but in section A, or one of the recognitions, one of the teachers, Sharon Hain, was mentioned, and just the spelling is H-E-H-N.
Okay.
And that was it, that was my only edit,
All in favor for the region?
as amended.
As amended?
For the region
Aye.
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 and for Concord?
And for Concord?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay.
Recognitions?
No, we have executive session minutes.
I thought we just did.
We did both.
Oh, you did both, sorry.
Correct.
Okay, sorry, got it.
So we were going to recognize a number of different happenings here tonight, and if you'll bear with us, we're going to reverse the order just because of our timing and honor the time of those who are here. So I first want to invite the Nordic ski team up. They're state champions this year.
All right.
So that and then we usually turn it over to you to tell us your story and hear how you got here, and let us tell you how proud we are.
Great. So we have about 8 members of our team, including 2 graduating captains who we're going to miss, and 2 rising captains, and some others here, and 2 of our coaches. I'll just say a few words of introduction, then I'll
Please.
turn it over to our students. But last year we came, and I think the closing comments were, I hope you make it back next year. So we took your advice and got back. This year we're bringing 2 championship teams back.
That's great.
So no, it's been a wonderful several years with this Nordic team, and a lot of credit goes to the graduating seniors who we are going to really miss. You may have been reading about us over the winter in the Concord Journal and Boston Globe. They've really done a terrific job, and I'll just point out a few things and maybe ask one or two of the captains just to say a word of thanks for the support we get. But if you weren't able to keep up with this team, it's really been a run that I've just been privileged to be connected to it. Our team is, if you may not know, it's a co-ed team of about 40 to 50 skiers. We have about a third of the kids every year have never skied before, so they're novices, and we usually have about 10 or 12 varsity athletes who are really serious skiers who train all year round. But this group has, over the last 4 years, the men's team has won 4 straight Mass Bay West League titles. So even though we've won the state meet, there's a lot of work that goes on to getting there, and I just want to point out some of those achievements. The women's team has won 3 of the last 4 Mass Bay West titles. We've had, usually out of 20 recognized league all-stars who are the top 10 in the league, we've had between 6 and 10 of those all-stars the last couple of years, including several who are here. 3 years in a row, we've had the Skier of the Year on the men's side. It was Tyler Lee 3 years ago. It was Henry Johnstone, Kat's son, last year. And this year was Aiden Nickel. And they got that by winning the all-state meet, the individual title. So we've had a lot of accolades to feel proud of. The women's, so this year was really a nice surprise. The women's team had not won state title since 1983.
Wow.
The men had won last year, and then they hadn't won since 1986. So this year we came back with 2 trophies, which was really an amazing accomplishment. Our arch rivals are from the Berkshire League. It's the Mount Greylock High School from Williamstown, Mass. And they're like we complain they're like a Nordic ski factory because they get snow about a month sooner than we do. And they practice on their fields right around their school.
Right.
So we're happy to have them as competition. And you know, the competition, it's a small sport. There's 25 teams or so in the state that sport a Nordic team. And it's just because it's a technical sport, and we don't always have coaches. So, but we have been competing with the best for a long time. And you know, in terms of the secret sauce, you know, I can let these guys maybe comment on it, but it's you know, we have amazing parent support. We have a couple parents here today. And obviously, the support we get from our school and the athletic director, I mean, Aaron Jonkas, Mike Mastrullo, and his blog comments and support, and this group. But let me just ask one or two of these guys to say a few words about the kind of... So Aiden's our departing captain, along with Kyle. Aiden's going to be skiing for Bowdoin College next year. He made their team, so he's going to be actively training over the summer, but go ahead.
Yeah, so it's been a wonderful 4 years. Really gonna miss, you know, the wonderful thing about our team, like Jeff said, is that we have all levels. We got people who've never skied before. The first practice is their first time ever on skis, and then we've got people who are training really hard coming to skiing college. But despite all of those differences, we just make it's such a great community, and it's so great, especially. To see the women's team rally for the state championship this year. I know Phoebe Myerson, one of the women's captains who wasn't here, worked so hard to get that group together to rally for the state championship. And I just wanted to say, you know, Nordic skiing is a really, really demanding sport. It's demanding for us athletes, but it's also demanding for whatever community has to support that. So we're really, really grateful for the support of the athletic department, in the high school and the district. You know, we're really lucky to have a lot of things that other teams don't have. We have a budget to cover supplies like ski wax, which is really expensive. We need a bus to practice every day. We have our dedicated area for waxing, and we have to travel to meets that are often pretty far away. So thank you so much for all of your support.
Yeah, we really appreciate the support of out-of-state travel. We had every year we have a great trip to Jackson to do training. We get a proposal in early for that. We'll be doing that again. But no, it's just been wonderful. And these guys, we have 4 of the 5 top returning freshman women based on the league standings. So the women's team is coming back fully full strength, and the men's team has a little bit of rebuilding to do, but hopefully we'll schedule another trip here. But any questions at all, feel free to.
Well, we have a very poor snow year, so how do you train when there's no snow?
We've got over in Weston, there's a municipal golf course, and in the winter, the DCR makes snow there, so we have a 1.5 kilometer track. That's a little bit monotonous sometimes. So it's good to get up north where there's some real hills, but
It's nicknamed the hamster wheel.
yes.
Good.
Oh, wow.
Any other comments or questions?
Any other questions?
Well, I would agree. You mentioned getting into the journal. You got very good press, and we were all happy to keep abreast of your accomplishments.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, we really appreciate the support. I mean, there are teams in our league, like Wayland and some others, who don't, they have to carpool to practice every day in Weston, and we don't always like to get all the way down 128 to Weston. We prefer to go to Great Brook if we can, but it's great snow, and you know, the bus company really puts up, we're probably the most difficult team. We're always changing our plans with the weather and canceling sometimes, but no, just, we've gotten everything we've ever asked for, so keep it up, please, and we'll hopefully come back.
Amazing accomplishments, and not to take any credit here for this year, but come back next year.
Yeah, right.
Thank you.
Just ask me.
Thank
Thank you so much.
Well done.
So we have two new student reps from the CHS to the school committee, Amy Tedeschi and Linda Zhu. You want to give us a little update about what's going on at the...
And they're going to be here with you for a year, so we're
All right.
welcoming them to their inaugural meeting.
So finals ended yesterday, and then Q5 began
They
today.
should start by knowing
So
how to
they're-
operate
Oh,
the... For a year, you need
Give
to
her
know
one
how
that's-
to actually turn it on.
working.
We'll just turn it on.
We'll try to set it up.
Press it and pray.
Here, you want one for a minute?
You can share.
Share that.
So finals ended yesterday, and Q5 began today. There are 38 different courses. Some of the popular ones are cake decorating, paddleboarding, bread making, obstacle course racing, and get out and see art. Also, Ava Ferguson won the New York Times editorial contest. Marissa E. and Harriet Martin earned the Superior Writing Distinction, which is the highest award level, for the annual writing contest conducted by the National Council of Teachers of English. And Ken Liu was also nominated.
As for sports, on June 1st, several of our track athletes participated in all states. Matt Kleiman, Alex Arenthal, Iris Bergman, Chris Radcliffe, Will Chafin, Sarah Reicheld, Emma Carimo, Catherine Stevens, Margaret Kovacevic, and Nora Johnson participated in those. And Emma, Matt, and Alex are going to go on to nationals this Saturday. And on June 3rd, Gabrielle Shea won the Massachusetts Individual State Golf Championship. And our varsity men's and women's lacrosse team are currently in playoffs.
So on May 24th, the Student Senate hosted a pop-up thrift store, which raised almost $500 for Second Chances, which is an organization that reuses and recycles clothing for low-income people.
And student government recently hosted their first Parents' Night Out, where we had students volunteer to babysit their children, and then all the donations were made out to Cradles to Crayons.
And they also successfully put together Senior Week, in which there was an outing at Kimball's, Candy Lake Park, and a bunch of other activities.
Just a few
Great.
things going.
Still a lot of that going on
Yeah.
across the board.
Thank you.
That's exciting. So we look forward to having your updates for next year. We'll try to get you in and out of here, so.
I wonder,
When you're not done with finals,
Yeah.
you'll be able to get on this time. Any comments, questions?
well, given your importance to us, the fact that we really do rely on you and your participation, do you know everybody here? I doubt it. So I think we should introduce ourselves
Sure,
to you,
good idea.
if we could.
It's a great
Eva,
idea.
why don't you start?
Yes, Emma Mustafi from Concord-Carlisle Regional and also Carlisle School Committee.
Cynthia Rainey from Concord and Concord-Carlisle Regional School Committee.
Ivan Ehrlich, both committees. I have twin boys as freshmen in high school.
Court Booth, and I was recently a CCHS parent.
I'm Heather Bowd, and my oldest will join you guys at the high school next year, and then I have two boys who will be in the middle school and Willard next year.
Wally Johnston, both committees, and as of, was it last week?
Yeah.
No longer a high school parent.
David Modell, Carlisle, parent, and in 2 days, rising freshman at CCH.
Exactly.
Parent of a rising freshman.
Dr. Hunter, Superintendent.
Jared Stanton, Director of Finance and Operations.
May I ask you, I mean, it's customary to bring all the news about, the achievements of sports and participation in other, but it'll be extremely interesting for me, I guess, that for all of us, if you bring us some inside reports of the less, not so much, not only the achievement, but for instance, the Challenge Success Program, the mindfulness and stress within your peers and stuff like this. This would be an extremely, because we see it from above, and that will be, for many of us, or for all of us, maybe the more significant kind of spine into the that we cannot get hands-on than you can.
Yeah.
We know you work hard, we want to know if you're happy.
Exactly.
Great.
Great, thank you very much.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks. Enjoy your summer.
Thank you.
Oh, you want me to just keep going?
Yeah, just keep going.
So I'm going to introduce Mr. Actually, do you mind, Steve, John, if I do one more? Another quick one? They're being really patient, the mentor program, because all these other quick ones are getting bumped in front of them. But Mr. Cameron has an 8th grade dance to go to, so I'm going to move him up so he can go. He's going to introduce a couple of staff members and their exceptional work.
No dates. My date's not moving.
Yeah.
No, she's at home with your
So thank you. The Office of the Governor has asked me, the Governor has asked me to step in for him, Governor Baker, and present this. We're so proud at the middle school and throughout the district, our work in competence and cultural competency has really broadened. And our commitment is really strong right now. And the work that was done by these two fine educators to my right, they are both advisors to our LGBTQ+ club. And they can answer any questions you might have about their great work. But the Office of the Governor, Governor Baker, has issued a formal citation for the work that they have done this year. In an effort and a focus on the LGBTQ+ Day of Silence that we had at the middle school on April 12th. So I'd like to read this, and then any questions you might have. So this is the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Concord Middle School LGBTQ+ Club. On behalf of the citizens of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, I am pleased to confer upon your club this Governor's citation in recognition of your efforts under the supervision of Molly McGee and Laura Regis to lead the Concord Middle School in its first LGBT Day of Silence on April 12, 2019. This, the 5th day of June in the year 2019, signed by our Governor. I'd like to present this to both of our advisors.
Thank you.
Questions that you might have of their important work?
I don't know where to begin. I want to hear all about this group and what they're doing. How many kids are involved and what kind of stuff are you doing throughout the year?
Yeah, we have usually about 12, I would say, students, sometimes more, sometimes less, depending on the day. It's a place where students are just meant to be themselves and be comfortable. We do a circle, kind of a check-in to see how everyone's doing, how their week is going first, what pronoun they prefer. And then we talk, and it's pretty loose. We let the kids kind of run it the way that they want it. We have some 8th grade student leaders who have been great, and it kind of varies what we do or what we discuss daily.
Yeah.
You can talk about the day of silence specifically.
We meet weekday too, which has been, is that what
Oh, yeah.
It's not great. So it started 2 years ago. We started the club well, I should say we didn't start the club, the kids started the club, and it's an important distinction to make because I was just saying to Justin and Molly while we were waiting for you all that I've been in the middle school for 15 years, and I was cleaning up my room a couple years ago and I found a binder of materials that I had brought with me right at the beginning of my career. It was how to start a GSA that was put up under the Rodney administration, and it just sat on my shelf because I felt that it would be willful of me to try to start something without it coming from the students. And two springs ago, a couple students who are now at CCHS approached me and asked if I would be willing to advise an LGBT club the following fall, and they fully expected me to say no, which is really interesting. And I said, why would you think I would say no? And they said, well, because you're coaching. And so I took it as a call to action. I dropped the coaching. I left coaching to do this instead. And so this is in our second year. It's grown a lot. I just think that part of being an educator is to create space for our students to become their whole selves, and I feel like that's what happens. I mean, we do let them run it. It came from the students, their ideas. Sometimes they stay close to their personal struggles and share that. Sometimes it expands out to, we definitely love to talk about what is going on in our school, what changes we'd like to make, and occasionally it's a 1-hour meeting is chaotic. They'll talk about national issues or things that they read in the news or heard on the radio and bring these things up. And so it's, I think Molly would agree, our role is to just be there with them. We don't lead it, the kids lead it, and just, create that space for them and let it evolve organically, because it will.
And we have had a lot of students joining in the last few weeks of
other clubs had ended already, and we kept going till the end of the year, and so new kids came in, and it's been really nice.
I'm sure that in a community of 600-700 kids, they have all kind of challenges with their peers. I'm more interested in things that come up during those discussions with challenges they have with administrators and with teachers. Do they have problems in the school with teachers and administrators?
I would say that the biggest feedback they have given us is feeling invisible at times, because you can't necessarily identify a student who is transgender or who is gay or bisexual or whatever it may be just by looking at them, and that is true, right? That's the truth. And so I think it was last year they compiled, I sent this to you, Justin, I remember, what do we want our teachers to know? And it was a long list of things, and one of the biggest things, which is a challenge for me as an English teacher, although it's been an okay transition, is to use they as a singular pronoun. And so because it's such my habit to say, would each of you, he or she in your paper, or just, I speak that way, and I've stopped speaking that way. And just being able to bring that to the faculty's attention. And what is amazing about the middle schoolers is they have the capacity to understand best intention versus, what could happen in practice. So they feel that their teachers and administrators want to do everything they can to support them. And the kids give us a pass when we mess up. I still start every class almost, or I consistently address my class, guys and girls, and now I go, guys and girls, because out of habit, and then I immediately follow it with, and anyone who doesn't identify in the binary, and then some of the kids in the club will high-five me in class, and I'm trying, and I'm an advisor, so they're really good about understanding. I think they truly believe that the school, the teachers, the adults around them, are there to help them. I think their challenge is more with peers.
Do you have support with the parents of this group as well?
Yeah, I think Justin could speak to that too. Yeah. I mean, I've not heard anything, but he's the boss. He gets the feedback.
One more piece about the faculty too, and their own vulnerability of learning from our students is, the club came into a faculty meeting and took over, good 20 or 30 minutes and helped to lead our faculty in just the different, the different ways and the different research and all the good things there. Parents have been very supportive, very supportive. For students that we've supported as a school and a district in making a transition, you know, putting out that, you know, that notice that, you know, here's how we can, as a school district, equip parents with how to have the conversations at home. You know, that's a night that I stay close to my email and look at what emails are coming in, and they're nothing but supportive.
Makes me proud to be part of this district.
Yeah, the community
It's
too has been really supportive. The library reached out to us about doing an event just to get some feedback from students, what they would want, and parents have offered to donate books and different things, so it's been great.
I won't identify which teacher I'm referring to, but it's one of the two of you. When I say I've been in awe of your work before, so I'm not surprised, but I'm very impressed.
Thank you.
We're in awe again. Thank you.
If you ever want to join a club, what has happened almost accidentally and organically at the middle school is most of our affinity clubs where we have allies, we just have a lot of adults who come to the clubs. It's almost like a rotating third and fourth advisor to a lot of our different clubs and activities. It happens with our RISE club, it happens with our LGBT, school council, student council, it's happening. It's pretty cool. You know, just to put out there, like, you know, hey, you know, we're accepting any
Kids
adults
love
to stop in. It's like, you know, the days where Carson, Johnny Carson, yeah, you know, was out and he would have to get, you know, different hosts that would just come in. It's kind of like that.
I love that.
You shot your age. That's
They
great.
would love,
They love seeing other adults.
they do.
Wow.
And as a place that, you know, usually parents get the stiff arm from their kids, by the time they're walking in the door to middle school, it's nice to hear that there's
Yeah.
adults walking the halls that aren't employed by the schools.
It's the only way I can get in there, if someone other than my kids invites me in.
Thank you.
That's great, thank you guys so
Thank
much.
you. Keep it up.
Congratulations.
And last but not least, I thank them for their patience. John Foss and Steve Wells and a couple of the kids and their mentors are going to come and share the high school mentor program highlights of their work.
Mentoring.
Mentoring,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you, Board, for this opportunity, and I'm delighted to have this opportunity to talk to the school committee about this. We've been in business now for 6 years.
Try to use the mic.
Oh.
There you go.
We've been in business now for 6 years, and really have never had an opportunity to come and talk to the committee about this. But I'm going to do some condensing on the fly here. We've got Steve wanting to talk. We've got a couple of students here with us, both of whom have participated in the program for multiple years, and I know that you want to hear from them. Just quickly to give you some perspective on me, some of you know that I retired from Middlesex Savings Bank in 2011 after a 40-year banking career, and I spent 30 years at Middlesex. Ann and I have been residents of Concord since 1979 and have 2 children who graduated from CCHS, class of 95 and 98. You know, my proposal to establish this program to Peter Bedalment and Diana Rigby really was based on my belief that there's a lot that we can do as a community to help our children, help our students connect with mentors from different career fields in a way that complements what they're learning in the classroom. And just as an example, I think some of the things that we're thinking about is to have students gain an appreciation for some of the personal and professional traits and skill sets and other ideas that might be important as they leave this place, whenever that might happen to be. The program is open to sophomores, juniors, and seniors. And you know, some of the things we're talking about is the importance of collaboration and teamwork, developing interpersonal and problem-solving skills, building personal and professional networks, appreciating human differences. And along the way, we hope that mentors can help guide students in discovering hidden talents, perhaps, and uncovering and perhaps even cultivating new interests. Just to give you some quick stats, we had 42 student and mentor teams this year, the highest number in the program's history. That's up from year 1 enrollment in 2014 at 15 students. So we've come a long way. Notably, we welcome any student to apply for this program. regardless of their academic rank or personal circumstances. And we've got capable mentors at the ready to help them, and very committed mentors. The program, in terms of credit, students need to do 3 things to get successful credit for this program. One is to commit to 8 to 10 hours of meeting time with a mentor. One is to complete a program evaluation and to attend the end of program event in May. That's it. It's not a letter graded program. Actually, there's a pass-fail option with 1.25 credit hours or community service credit for participating in the program. Students are welcome to apply in multiple years, and some students are doing just that. In fact, we had 11 students this year repeating, including the 2 students that you are about to hear from. This year's 42 mentors included 14 new and 28 repeating mentors selected from a group of 50 volunteering mentors from 46 different career fields. So, you know, there's really been some real enthusiasm in the community for this program. And I've spent some time talking to Cord about this. He's familiar with what I've been doing. And it really has been a very satisfying experience for me. You know, we give in terms of the program design, we give the mentors and the students plenty of latitude to select discussion topics that are of interest to each student and mentor team. There's very few prescribed formats here. You know, there's not a syllabus. We provide suggested discussion topics that the mentors and students can discuss. But really, there is no set curriculum. There's very few, if any, prescribed discussion or meeting formats. What's important is that we're hearing from the students and hearing what they want to learn from this program. And I think as you'll hear from the 2 students this evening, they've had some wonderful experiences in the program. Past mentors have used some combination of one-on-one meetings, site visits, client meetings, and other interactions with key people in their network. You know, in concluding my remarks, which I've condensed quite a bit, excuse me, you know, I've often thought that there's a lot of things I could do in my retirement. I retired from Middlesex Savings Bank in 2011, and I'm not sure that I can imagine anything that has given me more satisfaction than putting this program together. And now, having served about 175 kids in the last 6 years. And, you know, I think there's plenty of room for us to grow this program. You know, we're quite happy with the 42, but there's no reason that number couldn't be 62 or 75, you know, whatever. I mean, obviously, we'd have to make some changes to our staffing configuration and such, but I think the program has been exceptionally well received, and I'm just delighted to have been a part of it. And with that, I'm going to introduce Steve Wells, who is the faculty coordinator for the program since the beginning, has been a very able and relied upon associate for this program.
Should I sit or stand?
Whatever's comfortable, sit down.
Thank you. So I just want to talk, before I turn it over to everyone we really want to hear from, which is the students, but just talk about how the program works, especially from my perspective. So during the fall, John spearheads the mentor recruiting, although this is really kind of always ongoing. In fact, people in Concord will run the other way when they see John coming now, because they might be trying to rope them in. Also during the fall, I do a lot of publicity within the student body, emails, the daily bulletin, the principal's blog, promotional videos, slideshow in the Learning Commons, TV, monitors in the hallways, that kind of thing. Once we finalize all the participating mentors, we open up applications for the students in November, and then in December, John and I meet to match the students based on their interests and our available mentors. We tell them who their mentor is shortly after they return from winter break. And then we hold both mentor and student orientations in January to kind of get everyone on the same page with our expectations and tips for successful engagement. We officially kick the program off at the start of second semester And like John said, the students meet for 8 to 10 hours over the course of that time, and doing a variety of different activities with their mentors. I'll provide check-ins along the way, and sometimes we have optional events. A big success for the mentors has been an event that John hosts at his house, a mentor social. We sometimes have tried to run a student mixer, and also some of the mentors have volunteered students to come see their company. For example, Pam Slatcher Moran has offered students to come check out her company Immunogen. It's a biotech company in Waltham. So students that beyond just her mentee can come check out the company for an afternoon. And then the highlight of the program for me is the final event, which Dr. Hunter was able to attend this year, where we kind of just summarize the experience and then hear from about 4 or 5 of the student and mentor teams, and kind of hear about their experiences. And that is always the highlight for me, is just hearing directly from the students all the different kinds of things they did, what they learned from the program, what they got out of it. We also do evaluations for both the mentors and the students, which we really try to dive into deeply and take their feedback so we can improve the program. John will summarize the content into a report to send out to the mentors, as well as Dr. Hunter and Mr. Mastrullo. So that's kind of the flow of the program, and it's been really special for me to be a part of it from basically the beginning. But without further ado, I want to introduce the 2 students who are going to speak. So first we'll have, and she's no stranger to you guys, Aliana Potter, who is a rising senior, and then we have Krithi Tupul, who is a graduated senior. So first we'll hear from Aliana.
Hello.
Hi. Welcome back.
Thank you. So this is my second year participating in the program. I had a pretty interesting experience. My first year, I was paired with a marketing consultant named Mark Carr. And we realized pretty early on that I was not interested in marketing consulting. So we didn't do as much work specifically about marketing consulting, but I learned a lot about running meetings, what he does, and he actually took me in to visit an ad agency, which is one of the things that one of the people that he's worked with a lot. And I found that really interesting. I got to meet with the CEO of the agency. He talked to me about how he got to where he was. We also ended up at one of his consulting firms that he started out with when he was first beginning his career, which was really interesting. I got to talk to a lot of female leaders within the company. And one of the things I learned, the biggest thing that I learned meeting with him and meeting with all the other people he introduced me to, was that people don't end up where they want to. They never end up where they think they will. And so that was kind of the lesson that I took away from it, but I also learned the ad agency was my favorite place I visited, and I learned that was more the path that I was interested in. So my second year, I got paired up with a graphic designer who has done a lot of work with ad agencies. His name was Steve Close, and he was amazing. He taught me so much. We did a lot of design work. He showed me his work. He works with McLean Hospital, and so he gave me some pens from there that he had designed. And then at the end, we designed a sticker, which I got printed, which was really fun. And so I just had an amazing experience with the program. I learned a lot about things that I didn't think I would have learned going into it, but things that I will use a lot in my life from now on. And I'm really lucky to have had this experience, and it's something that I'm going to use with me for the rest of my life.
Wow, that is great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Krithi Tupul, and as Mr. Well said, I just graduated from CCHS, and I will be attending Bryn Mawr College in the fall. I participated in the Community Connections program for all 3 years, sophomore through senior year.
I've had 3 amazing mentors that have not only taught me about their fields of work, but have instilled life lessons in me that I'll take with me through the next chapters of my life. My first mentor was actually Miss Slatcher Moran, who works at Immunogen, which is, as Mr. Wells said, a biotechnology company that's located in Waltham. And my second mentor was Miss Lavinia Chase, who worked in investment management. But through both these wonderful independent women, I learned the importance of speaking up, especially being a woman in the workforce. In their fields, it tends to be difficult for women to have their voices heard, but through their stories and their anecdotes, they taught me how to speak up and be heard, which I actually applied in my life during various internships that I've held since meeting with them. And my final mentor this year was Chief Joseph O'Connor, who is the chief of police of the Concord Police Department. And during my time there, he taught me the importance of teamwork and listening to others. And through his anecdotes and stories, he also told me different situations while he thought that he collaborated with his partners and came out with better outcomes rather than working alone. I've chosen to come back since sophomore year through my senior year because I loved what the program had to offer. Both Mr. Fawcett and Mr. Wells continue to do an amazing job offering many opportunities and mentors for the students at CCHS, which is what kept me coming back. Every year I knew I was ready to go into this program, ready to be paired with someone else to learn different things and to expand my horizons. High school, as we all know, is kind of a restrictive place in terms of the type of classes that can be offered and the number of classes that we can take. So the CC program has helped students like me, quote unquote, go out into the real world and learn about topics and potential career paths that we may or may not learn about sitting in front of a whiteboard in a school setting. As I mentioned before, through this program, I've learned many different life skills. But being a part of this program, especially in the last year, right before I head off to college, I learned that life isn't going to go exactly as planned, but what matters is whenever I'm presented with a challenge, I take it head on and with a smile. This seemed to be a common denominator for all 3 of my mentors, because while they explained all the great experiences they've had in their fields, they didn't hesitate to open my eyes to the hardship that they've experienced as well. And I think that was really important for me because obviously I know life isn't always sunshine and rainbows, but it really opened my eyes into looking into a real life application to that. This is obviously one of the biggest things I will take away when I leave Massachusetts in the fall and start the next chapter of my life, and that's, so thank you.
Wow.
Thank you.
That's
John, do you want to wrap up? We've got some,
Any questions?
any questions from, Court's going to eat the mic.
Yeah. Let me at it.
So many questions.
Well, first of all, John, I'm impressed with many things, but the program sounds profoundly simple, and you say that's a real key to its success, that it's got a low bar for entry and then a very high bar for what can possibly happen, which I commend you for. I think it's wonderful. The best way I think we can recognize your efforts is to ask you and ask Steve and the students, how can we encourage more people to lean in the way you did and take advantage of this opportunity? Because, my guess is for some students it takes some courage to say, I'm going to leave the mainstream curriculum and go out and work with somebody in industry. How could we encourage more people and help John and Steve do that in the future? Anything come to mind?
Just talking about our promotional efforts, we begin those efforts kind of in September, late August, whatever. And, promoted fairly actively in a number of different ways, which Steve can talk about, but, probably 4 or 5 or 6 different avenues that we use to promote the program. Steve, did you just want to comment on?
Yeah, a lot of parents have been great about telling their children about the program, and we never want a parent to say like you have to do this, but encourage them to check it out. And then I think just kind of word of mouth from the students, and Christy and Aliana could probably speak to it as well, but just kind of spreading the word about it, because since we don't have a class period when we meet, it is hard to kind of promote it in that sense. But yeah, would you guys have anything?
Yeah, I mean, just from like telling people about the different meetings that I've had, the things I've had the opportunity to do. The first year I did it, I didn't know anyone doing it, and the second year I had 3 or 4 of my friends in the program as well. So I think just the more people talk about their experiences, the more interest the program will have.
We had 42 mentors this year, including 14 new and 28 repeating mentors, and they were selected from a group of 50 mentors who volunteered. And I think that we have the capacity fairly easily to expand that number of mentors. One of the things that, as a local banker, having spent almost 30 years with Middlesex Savings Bank and 10 years elsewhere before that, is I know a lot of folks around town. So it's fairly easy for me to identify people that I'm going to target and people kind of...
You mean approach?
People avert my eyes when they see me coming down the sidewalk. But, theoretically, I think we've got the capacity to readily recruit another 20, 25 mentors. And, my time in this role probably is probably that I begin to think about handing this off. But it really has been just a fabulous experience for me in retirement. I retired from Middlesex Savings Bank back in 2011. And this has been kind of one of my primary pursuits starting in school year 2013, 14, something like that.
Is there one person per mentor, or a mentor will actually handle more than one during the year?
These are one-on-one.
Yeah, I understand this, but a mentor will have, during 1 year, academic year, will have one student, or he can handle a few in the same year?
I think theoretically it's really a one and done situation.
So you have about 42 students, 42 mentors?
Yeah, but what we ask for is we ask for 8 to 10 hours of meeting time, and a minimum of 8. They can go to 12 hours or 14 hours, whatever it happens to be, and sometimes it does just that. But that's what we ask for, is a minimum, is 8 hours. And that seems to be a reasonable commitment for mentors, and certainly I have the capacity, I think, along with other people in the community, to identify other mentors as needed. So I think that this can be expanded. I'm not averse to doing that, but I think the program really has made a positive impact on a lot of students, and to my way of thinking, nobody's excluded from this opportunity. If a student in Concord-Carlisle High School wants to participate in this program, we'll figure out a way to do it.
So it sounds like you don't turn any students away. So far you've been taking every student that have applied to your program.
Yeah.
You have the full capacity. I just wanted to commend you on a beautiful program as it gives students some concrete skills going in, some more understanding of where they might want to be going. And maybe the young lady that has been going to that agency, maybe she can come up with some ads on Instagram. That's where the kids are at right now, to reach more students. It's a great program. Thank you. Thank you for what you guys are doing.
And I want to thank you both. I think the important thing with Mr. Wells and Mr. Fawcett is the continuity. You've both been with the program since the beginning, and I think that year after year you're attracting more students, and I'm sure you're getting faculty who are referring kids to you. So that's just so important. So thank you.
I think it's great you're here because we are broadcast, and hopefully this will get to some people that may not have gotten to it before. And it's great to hear about the program. I'll just echo what you've said, which is, these are, you know, this is a volunteer program, and its lifeblood is people volunteering to help. And we have a number of things like that in the school district that are important, and hats off to the people who have come forward and offered to be mentors, and I hope that there are people listening who will contact you and participate in the program going forward.
We spend a lot of time at the end of each program year soliciting feedback from both mentors and students, and that's really been reaffirmed in terms of what we're doing, and we've picked up a lot of good suggestions about how we might modify the program approach. And we're always willing to hear that, always like to hear feedback from students and mentors, and that can only make the program better as we adapt it to the student body and to the mentor group.
Do you, on the publicity side, do you have a web page within the school?
We have a dedicated website.
You do? Okay, maybe you want to tell it to the audience.
cchs-connections.org. We've had that website in place. Steve, did we have that the first year? Not until the second year. But actually, we got some funding to do that from the community chest.
Oh, that's great.
They provided some funding for the
Is there a link to the school page, the school website?
I don't think so.
Is there any reason?
We'd be happy to be put on there.
Mr. Mistrula and I will work.
For anybody who didn't hear it, cchs-connections.org.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other comments? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Exactly.
I just wanted to thank Lori for this invitation and for your enthusiasm for what we're doing. It makes a big difference.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One more recognition.
We're going to do that one a little later in the meeting, when we get to the Concord portion.
Chairs and liaisons reports. Anybody?
Any liaison reports? Yes. Yes, Ella has one.
Yes.
There you go.
So I have attended the setback board meeting, and just wanted to give an update. I will be the CCHS, I was voted in to be the CCHS liaison for setback.
Yeah. Can everybody hear? Can you speak closer to the microphone or speak up a little bit?
So I have attended this
Great.
this setback board meeting, and one of the updates is that I will be taking on a role of a CCHS liaison. Just wanted to let everyone know that setback is a very active group of parents and community members, and the very nice thing that I've heard is that their website is actually used by other school districts, so it provides a lot of information. It's a great link for parents and a resource to use. So hopefully we can get more people interested in attending those meetings as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you for representing us there. It's great.
I too attended the CPAC, and it's a great group, and they're very active, as we know. So we look forward to an exciting year.
Thanks.
Anybody
Any other
else?
liaison?
Dave and I went to the Carlisle Town Moderators recap, and in short, what I got, David, was there is some consideration about whether the CCH budget would get more detail in front of the Carlisle Town Meeting in the future. No conclusion, because that budget's presented as part of the overall educational package. So there might be a deeper dive into it, perhaps. And secondly, the conversation was not unlike the one in Carlisle. How do we increase participation at town meeting?
Others?
Anybody else?
Well, I'll just, as the CPS chair's report, it's very brief. It's that the election question passed and we're moving forward with our middle school plans. and I'll do the middle school update later, but just have to mention, we're very happy that the election question passed.
Thank you. Superintendent's report.
Okay, great, thank you. It's a busy, busy time of year, so these are really high-level updates and meant to just be informational. So there's a number of them that will certainly become more in-depth agenda items in future meetings, but I wanted to be sure I closed the year with at least getting the information to you. We did finish the work to hire elementary assistant principals, so we've named one at each school, and we're excited to have that support in place going into the fall. Special education programming, we've identified our intensive programming for the fall, what we're aiming to create. And you can see it's across the 3 elementary schools, 2 programs at the middle school, and an age 18 to 22 program at the high school. So we're excited to keep building a continuum of services in our most intensive settings, as well as looking at all the reconfiguration work we've done through the West Ed reviews and the outcomes of those. Enrollments and staffing, and really the part I think to highlight here, we wanted to get way ahead of the October 1st enrollment numbers that will drive the assessments to each community during the next budget cycle. So we collected the June 1st enrollment numbers in 8th through 11th grade, both in Concord and in Carlisle, so you could see where that trend is going. What the outcome there is that there's an assessment shift of just over 0.75%, swinging back toward Concord, so that'll be a $270,000, $290,000 some piece for Concord to consider. Carlisle considered it last year. You'll remember Concord considered it the year before. So you've got just these little swings that add up to $200,000 to $500,000 that each community has to factor into their process. And that'll certainly be something we continue to talk on as we go into the budget cycle, where I'm committed to getting farther and farther ahead of these numbers so that we see them and can be more predictable. I think Carlisle is actually doing a great job of that from the conversations we're having there, and I think we need to own that a little bit more in Concord to just be aware of it going into the budget, what the impact is rather than as part of the budget. We're wrapping up all of our educator evaluation processes. The cycle is similar to what you'll be doing with mine tonight in terms of summative evaluations. In terms of the middle school, and we'll talk more on this later during the Concord School Committee portion of the meeting, but all things middle school are happening. We're about to move, we're about to paint, we're about to put in rugs, we're reconfiguring Sanborn for the 8th grade. I told them this afternoon, we were at the staff meeting with Mr. Cameron, and I think it's going to be like this grand reveal or something in August when we just have perked the buildings up and they're more comfortable environments in addition to the middle school schedule and the special ed reconfiguration. We've been looking at extracurriculars. We briefly considered a football opportunity for kids and have decided to not pursue that for multiple reasons of the past program fading out, the youth programs haven't been sustainable, and we had some health concerns, so we're not going to go forward there. I did give you the sustainability report that is really meant to be the working goals and action plan that the committee will be working off of. We can talk more in depth on that as we get into the fall, but I wanted to show you that we had set really pretty precise targets for this coming year across a broad range of areas relative to sustainability. Cultural proficiency, and you heard great work coming out of the middle school tonight. We did wrap up the year on May 28th with Dr. Derek Gay, who visited in multiple sessions, but was able to work with all of K-12. And we had really positive feedback on his inspiring message, which was about not just diversity and the challenges of what that definition is and how best intentions and outcomes can be different, but also in the big picture of our instruction and pedagogy and how we're trying to reach all kids. So it was really great to hear him make those connections. Very well received by the staff, and we're grateful to the Concord Education Fund for all the support they gave us fiscally this year for 3 really strong keynote speakers that addressed all of our staff. And community and collaboration, I couldn't possibly capture it all here. By the time we get to next week, I'll have been at graduations at all 3 elementary schools, both middle schools tomorrow morning and the high school, and delivered rose bushes. We have a really beloved tradition here of giving a hopefully never-ending blooming rose bush to retiring teachers, and we've been doing that as part of staff meetings, which has been a really intimate environment to do it. I think I've done 4 out of the 5 schools. I'll be at the high school on Monday, really honoring our retirees. So a lot of the theme has been celebrating the work of our graduates and our retirees, whatever level they're at, whatever their accomplishments are, and that's been a lot of fun, in addition to the concerts and shows and plays and field days and all of those other things that are happening in the end of the year. So a lot of fun.
Did you get to participate on the trampoline at the
I did
CMS
pass on the
day?
trampoline. I did. I was invited to the Alcott balloon toss, where the staff tosses water balloons to one another, and decided I wasn't quite
Couldn't
dressed
make
for the
it.
outcome of that. But Ms. Young can tell you how she's a finalist every year. So a lot of fun.
That's great.
So Lori, I just have some questions on the assistant principal, a question.
Sure.
So, especially Sue Howard, the instructional, how are we gonna?
Yep, we've been talking a lot with Sue
Yeah.
on what her responsibilities have been. The first thing we're going to look at is she's been doing a lot of professional development and district level work, so
Right.
we'll scale back that first and
Okay,
then monitor.
because I mean, I know
Yeah,
every,
correct.
there, I mean,
Her
all of them
instructional
are-
technology role needs to still have some support available to teachers.
because each site has a strong
Yeah.
veteran.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also a challenge of bringing people from inside.
Yeah.
I'm going to take advantage just in a second, the fact that Principal Mastrulli is here. Cultural proficiency is like a buzzword in our schools with very good reason. CCHS has got an amazing program of travel abroad. Maybe there is a way to try and convince the program and the teachers to think about next year and next years that will be will stress cultural proficiency in the program abroad. To be hands-on, much more maybe interesting.
We're going to be working with the teachers and bringing you a big picture view, and we're going to have the teachers come and talk to you directly. We think that's going to be an important piece too. They can hear your feedback and you can hear more detail than Mr. Mastrullo and I could ever.
That's great.
Lori, quick question
Sure.
on the special education programming.
Yeah.
As I read it, would this suggest to us that in 6 or 8 months we would hear from you specific plans for additional programming? Because right now it's framed as a vision for programming, so I'm not sure about the timetable.
The vision is that we're opening these programs in the fall, so they're,
Okay.
vision's the wrong word, I think. Then,
So
we're
implementation.
implementing,
Thank
yes,
you.
yes.
Okay.
But we'll be bringing you updates throughout next year, both
Got it.
in terms of reconfigurations and
Mhm.
programming, and, Corey, you actually asked for data, which we're gathering and can already see changes and patterns. And I say all of that with it still being about individual kids and what they need, and just trying to broaden our option sets.
So that would suggest that every school, and you certainly have your work cut out for you to monitor
Yes.
the launch
Absolutely.
and make modifications.
Right. And I can't say enough, this team of principals you're going to talk with tonight, I've given multiple opportunities to say we can slow down, we can wait for Ruth Gruby to join us, we can not do this as fast, and they're all about the needs of the kids that they see in front of them, and they are committed to putting these programs in place and making them work, and it does take a lot of effort, and they are the feet on the ground making sure that things go well. So,
Excellent, thank you.
yeah. Good.
That's great.
Anything else? Okay.
Just
Correspondence.
correspondence quickly. The Concord committee just had one email asking about a policy, and we followed up with a response on that. So that was all we had for Concord. Thanks.
Okay. Superintendent Evaluation. Why don't we join it? Do you want to come up to the table?
Sure.
Join us. It's a long time. We miss
Yeah.
you.
Welcome back.
It's interesting this year. Since I've come on the committee, I don't think we've started the year with the same members of the committee. Moving forward, we've had a number of one-term folks, but this year is really unusual because there are 3 people at the table tonight who participated in the superintendent evaluation, which we traditionally do with the people who have been on the committee during the course of that year. And so I bring that up certainly as we go through this. Comments or questions from anybody are welcome, but if you're quiet, it's with good reason. People should be aware of that. So we each do our own evaluation, and then we, as a group, come together with a summative assessment, which are thanks to Joanna for having done it for, I think, 3 years in a row. And Heather and I did it this year. And just to sort of get things started here, you know, this report is a public report and will be available to anybody who wants to read it. All we'll go through tonight are is the summative version. And thanks to everybody who has put their evaluation report in. It starts with access progress towards goals, student learning goals. One of the things we did this year was sort of indicate the number of people who indicated a certain level for any given area that was being categorized. So, but 4 out of 6 were met. District improvement goals, 2 met, 3 exceeded. Professional practice goals, 3 met and 2 exceeded. Overall, there's a portion of this, it's step 2, which is assess performance on standards. And there are 4 standards in this process. I'm losing the rubric that we utilize for this. Standard 1 is instructional leadership. 5 were proficient and 1 exemplary. Standard 2, management and operations, 4 proficient and 2 exemplary. Standard 3 is family and community engagement, 4 were proficient and 2 were exemplary. And standard 4, professional culture, 4 were proficient and 2 were exemplary. I'll just point out there's an overall summative performance taking into account all 4 categories. And as we roll those up, we indicate that as proficient being the rating, with 4 people indicating proficient and 2 exemplary. Some of the things that stand out here, and again, I'm not going to read this verbatim, but it will be available. And we had a number of things going on this year that were challenges, both foreseen and unforeseen. We had some sizable staff turnover, and a revamp of the sped delivery process. Our efforts to get approval from Concord to move forward to the middle school building feasibility and design study, preparation for negotiating of a new Cta contract, undertaking a zero-based budgeting process for fiscal year 20. And that's just to name a few. And the overall identification of Dr. Hunter's performance was very positive, knowledgeable, visionary, great dedication to these efforts. One of the things we heard regularly was engaging and active listening, empowering stakeholders, both community members, parents, students, teachers, administrators, and that we continually see creative ideas and solutions to things that come before us. It was also identified that there's always room for continued improvement, which Dr. Hunter indicates herself, and we are very much looking forward to next year with sort of a full complement of central administrators and building administrators, and it's going to be an exciting year. There's as we know, there have been many things we've been doing to make some changes and move forward in new directions with things, and every year we get further into that, and it becomes more process versus creation, and it will be interesting next year to see how that goes. We expect great things. The approach to managing and directing the districts has fostered collaborative community, learners, educators, and administrators, and with increasing trust and honesty, openness, and integrity, which was the theme throughout almost everybody's comments. And I think it's important to note the change in morale that's happened, engagement of faculty, both from direct request and just from people offering input. And I think that's part of the active listening aspects that we hear so often. So I would say basically across the board, throughout all 6 reviews of the summative, very strong positive comments. And I will read this, just some of the quotes from various pieces of people's writing. A truly outstanding leader, goes above and beyond in her efforts, inspires everyone to try new things and bring their very best to their work each day, cares deeply about staff and students, privileged to work alongside her, a tireless work ethic and commitment to this community, and a common refrain, we're lucky to have her. So the next section is 8 items about student learning, district improvement, professional practice. I think rather than read through each of those, they're available in the report. I'm going to move on. I'll talk a little bit about Standard 1 and Standard 2, and then Heather will talk about Standard 2 and 3. Instructional leadership. Basically, there are 5 categories here: curriculum, instruction, assessment, evaluation, data-informed decision-making, and across the board proficiency in those areas, with 5 indicating proficient in this standard and 1 exemplary. I think just in the interest of time, I'll read the summation for those who might be listening. Dr. Hunter consistently exhibits a commitment to high standard and outcomes with the expected result of success for both students and staff. She works tirelessly through a hands-on approach to coalesce students, faculty, and parents around shared goals of continuous improvement and powerful teaching and learning throughout both districts. Dr. Hunter has fostered improved special education services by empowering staff to find creative ways to improve delivery. A year-long focus on cultural proficiency through collaborative relationships has encouraged accommodation of diverse learning needs of students. In addition, she's worked with and empowered faculty in building leadership to strive for continuous improvement in evaluation and feedback of teacher performance, leading to ever-improving learning environments. Through Dr. Hunter's leadership and creativity, we are implementing elementary assistant principals by bringing internal faculty members into these positions with no additional costs incurred. Standard 2, management and operations, again, breaks down into 5 areas: environment, human resources management and development, scheduling and management information systems, law, ethics, policies, and fiscal systems. The first was, as a summative, was exemplary in the environment and the human resources management and development, proficient. Scheduling management, proficient. Law and ethics policies, proficient. And fiscal systems, exemplary. An overall summation in this area of proficient by 4 and 2 exemplary. Again, Dr. Hunter is consistently challenged by unforeseen events, and she has risen to each occasion beautifully. She's hands-on without being a micromanager. Her efforts at building relationships throughout the schools and towns have earned her the support and trust she needs to be nimble and effective in her work. She models the kind of comprehensive attention to school environment that's necessary for student success. Her ability to transition from one priority and constituency to another daily and hourly is a very positive attribute. Under Dr. Hunter's guidance and encouragement, the districts have made a significant positive adjustment to the delivery of special ed, improving the quality of service in a way that ensures long-term budgetary savings with little to no current increase in costs. Dr. Hunter and her team successfully managed the zero-based budget analysis and development this year, which has improved everyone's understanding of the budget and give it a much clearer picture of where and how the district's funding assets are being utilized. This in turn signals to the stakeholders that the districts are handling finances respectfully. The budget is in the best interest of the students and supports the district's vision, mission, and goals. Despite some unexpected gaps in personnel and resources, the tightening of processes and writing of the ship could not be missed. Dr. Hunter stepped up to fill multiple roles when needed, even improving the overall operations of the process. Our hope is that her positive, realistic attitude will soon yield the full functioning administrative team she has earned.
All right, and he kicks it over to me. We're kind of splitting it in half. I get to take over with standards 3 and 4. So standard 3 is family and community engagement, an area where certainly Dr. Hunter is very strong. There are four parts to this one. The first is engagement, where her overall score among us was exemplary. B, sharing responsibility, was proficient. C, communication, was proficient. And D, family concerns, was proficient. Overall, in this category in standard 2, we had 4 people rating her proficient and 2 exemplary. So to summarize, both committees found Dr. Hunter's management of family and community engagement to be very strong, with ratings of proficient or exemplary. Members were overwhelmingly impressed by the collaboration, inclusivity, transparency, proactive communication, welcoming environment, and fostering of relationships evidenced by Dr. Hunter. They mentioned her ability to build bridges and her success in improving community relations, along with her culturally sensitive mindset and her practice of staying hands-on and engaged without micromanaging. It was also mentioned how important it is that she keep Carlisle viewpoints in mind in issues regarding the high school. Dr. Hunter has excelled at fostering strong community relationships. As one member put it, she has set a new tenor and expectation for inclusion and collaboration. Standard 4 is professional culture, another area where she's seen to shine here. There are multiple, let's see, what do we have? 6 parts to standard 4. There's A, commitment to high standards, in which her overall score was exemplary. Cultural proficiency, she is proficient. Communication is proficient. Continuous learning is exemplary. Shared vision is proficient, and managing conflict is exemplary. Overall, once again, we had 4 people rating as proficient and 2 as exemplary in standard 4. To summarize that one, the committees are in agreement that Dr. Hunter has created a strong, supportive, respectful, and empowering professional culture. Members mentioned her inclusive mindset, her cultural awareness, her compassion, her understanding of differences and differing viewpoints, her awareness of community culture, her communication skills, her short-term and long-term planning, and most prominently, her focus on students first. Several members also mentioned Dr. Hunter's ability not only to manage conflict and diminish angst, but to turn instances of conflict into opportunities for growth and relationship building. Not an easy task. Dr. Hunter leads by example, empowers her staff, and creates a professional environment of continuous improvement, mutual respect, and joint dedication to a common vision. So all of that, and that's the end of the actual written summation here. I'll just kind of say in terms of process and how we got to all of this, the words that you just heard while you're reading and me reading were not just each of us writing down what we thought, but taking the comments from all of, well, not all of you yet, from all of us, and Joanna, and Bob Grubb, and the other 2 from Carlisle, and pulling themes from those. What you heard us mention were things that came up multiple times in multiple people's evaluations, so I think all of those things are just really important to highlight. The things that we've mentioned came up multiple times and are highly valued. So I get to kind of summarize this whole experience, and I would start by saying that when we brought Dr. Hunter in, and obviously this was 2 years ago, that's not what we're reviewing now, but we had high expectations, and then she met them, and we had even higher expectations, and she has impressed us all yet again, even with those very high expectations, and surpassed many of them. She really, we have charged her with many things above and beyond the typical tasks of a superintendent running schools. We have asked her to improve morale and culture and relationships. We have asked her to really take challenges and turn them into building opportunities, and she has taken that and run with that task, I think, more than most people could have imagined. She really does lead by example. And integrity was mentioned. I want to bring that up because it is a core theme throughout everything that we have done and talked about. That your integrity in leading just shines through every single thing that you do, and that is not only respected by all of us and was mentioned by everybody, but very highly valued because it's at the core of how we all interact and work together. The last thing I would mention is just, as it was pointed out a couple of times, there were certainly some expected and some unexpected challenges this year. As there always are, of course, in any district, excuse me, you're going to have challenges. I think this year there were such changes in some areas and personnel shifts and rearranging and gaps at times that we've asked you at parts of this year to be doing the job of 3 people, not just 1. And I think that deserves mentioning because it really speaks to how you've gone above and beyond for all of us. And that was pointed out many times by everybody. So, again, I guess I just...
But it was not pointed out by you, Dr.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Just do what you gotta do.
You know, the one story that strikes me and still seems to capture a lot of what you do is one of the things that you told us when you first came in here, maybe a couple of months in, and you were visiting one of the classrooms. And I think one of the kindergartners, was it maybe? Called you the superhero of schools. and I think that title really fits. So we'd like to thank you for being our superhero of schools yet again. You are an outstanding leader according to all who are part of this, and we are extremely fortunate to have you, so thank you.
So, would anybody like to make any comments?
Add anything we missed in our
We'll start with the people
summary.
who participated in the
I'd like to just add one piece that I think everybody needs to hear, and that is that there was no grade inflation going on here. No, seriously, proficient is a very difficult bar. It really is. And this school committee started the process reminding each other that that is a very high bar. And we're a high-performing school district with very high-performing students and very high expectation, rightfully so, parents. But you knew what you were getting into, and so we are fortunate for you. But know that to not only be consistently proficient across the board, which is again a rarity among superintendents, but to have exemplary ratings across all 4 of those major criteria speaks to the ability that you have, but also I think speaks to the credibility you've earned in a very short time. That sets you apart. You've been here for 2 years and you have credibility as an educational leader that most people don't earn in a decade. So thank you.
Thank you.
Joanna?
Sure. First of all, thank you, Heather and Wally. I've done that, as you pointed out, and sitting with 7 evaluations that are very thorough and thick, and synthesizing it down into this is extremely time-consuming and difficult. But it's my last hurrah, so I get to just say to Lori, I know they're calling you Dr. Hunter, and I know you are a doctor.
In the official documents.
In your official documents, but I really, one of the single things I will miss the most is working with you. And I've done this for a long time, and one of the things I love the most about doing this work is working with people and learning from them. And that was really, it was a wonderful 2 years to be able to learn from you and to have the working relationship and friendship that evolves out of all of us being in the trenches together. So I just want to point out that putting it in a document is hard and it's limiting, but it really has been a tremendous, hopefully, start for what will be a long career, but I will really miss it personally. So thank you for all that I've learned and all that you've led us through, and there's a lot of optimism in the air because you don't work, and you're the one who works the hardest of any of us and is in the office the latest, and all the districts, the schools, the communities, really fortunate to have that, so thank you.
Thank you.
I got an email this morning at 4:40 a.m. That gives us an
I think a lot of you did.
And it's not uncommon.
And, you know, it's been, as Heather said, we had high expectations when you came in, you've met those and beyond. We're a double-edged sword. We have very high functioning districts, and we have very high functioning districts. And, you know, that brings challenges that I think it takes a unique person to be able to come in and be superintendent, not only of one district, but of two. And in a town, one of the things in the mentoring conversation that I thought was extraordinary was, I think there were 52 or 4 people in 48 different professions. And I've always talked about how, you know, the depth of knowledge in our two towns is pretty extraordinary. And that's an indication of that. But and I'll echo courts having gone through these ad nauseum over the last couple of weeks. There's no inflation of comment and grade here. And if I can for just 1 minute, because it's the last time she'll be at this table as a member of what we've done. Joanna, thank you. And you know, right to the end in this process, and we just finished up the negotiation of the Cta contract, which you participated at full swing all the way through, even though your term was up. Thank you, and you will be missed.
Thank you. My kids keep saying, you said it was over. It's still cold in here.
Just a couple of comments, because, you know, I think actually some of the most important people are in the room tonight, which is great because they're not always. You know, this leadership team that's sitting here waiting to talk to you, you're going to hear themes all throughout the work they've been doing this year that all correlate to the outcomes that are starting to happen, and it is not without their equally hard work ethic and all those other things you said about me that are now coming together with a team that's going forward in the same direction with the same vision, same values, and that synergy has nowhere to go but becoming extraordinary, frankly, as we get into the summer and fall with the last remaining pieces of that. The second team that supports me incredibly is this team here, and you know, the first 2 years, I think I've had unprecedented support from the school committee, and on the hard days, you are some of the people I lean on, which is unheard of in my job, and I look forward to building that with the new members because it's been absolutely so critical. There are days this job is so lonely that if these two groups of people aren't the rocks to lean back on and know you have this place you can say hard things, and I guess that's the integrity. I say a lot of hard things to people, whether they want to hear them or not, in a way they seem to be able to listen. But I mean, this synergy among that team and this team are just so critical to the success here, because I can only do a certain amount by myself. And how fun it is at the end of the year to watch some of this concrete stuff start to happen. And like, I feel like it's just happened all of a sudden. I think because my head's coming up out of the weeds a little bit, but we're going to build a middle school. We've got a Cta contract. We've got a really healthy budget that we're closing and about to work forward with. The kids are thriving, especially as we're giving more and better services to kids with more options. And it's becoming tangible, which is even more exciting and motivating, because that is the first piece of a long layer of work to be done. And yeah, it's the little things. Today, forgive me, but your evaluation's great, but the one that mattered most is the one at Thoreau, where a third grader met me at the door when I'm there for graduation. Angel will attest to this. Met me at the door with her letter of thank you because she's moving and she wanted to tell me how much she thought I was amazing and how she appreciated me going to all of her events. Oh, wow. Literally met me at the door waiting to make sure to hand this to me in person. That may be the biggest evaluation I could have. So, it is about the kids, and they will attest that when we get to hard decisions, I will look back and say what's best for kids, and we process that, and sometimes it's not what direction we planned or the easy direction, but we go there anyway. So I'm just grateful for all the support. It's impossible to get all of what you just said without it being a unified vision. So I'm glad to be here. We've got a lot of great things to come. It is a lot of hard work. I won't pretend that it's not. Some of you are there on the bad days, but the energy is fantastic, and the sky's the limit here. We can go so many great places, and I'm really looking forward to it. So excellent. Thank you.
We look forward to having you with us for a long time to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Nothing like having a review in public.
Oh,
I know. Phew, you got through it.
Yeah,
It's taped,
a lot.
You'll be able to watch it anytime you want.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm waiting for my family to realize they can watch all this. It hasn't dawned on them yet.
Oh, you haven't mentioned it.
I have not mentioned it.
All right.
So, you can stay there if you want. Or...
No, thank you.
Thank you, Joanna. You are going to stay for a little longer?
Little?
No, we're not gonna dive in.
So the next item on here is school committee practices and protocols, and this was the request of one of our members. And I think it makes sense just to include it and draw attention to it, because it's something we will talk about again at our workshop, which will be in September. And this, just so the new members understand, I think it was 4 years ago, because Kathy Snook was involved in this as well. We did a very thorough review of these, and made some adjustments and did some changes. And over the last 3 years, we've made some minor tweaks here and there. And it is really meant to reflect our committee, our committees. And as such, it's something that it's important for us to consider, look at, sort of understand it. Happy to talk to anybody about how we got to where we did on some of them. And if you've got any thoughts when we come around to the workshop in the fall, certainly we can bring those up at that point in time. But I wanted to make sure everybody had it and we drew some attention to it. Don't know that there's any need for comments, but if anybody has any, that's certainly fine. Otherwise, we can move on. So the next item, we had the Mars presentation, which is the Mass Association of Regional School Committees, for those who think we're trying to be funny. And they came and talked to us about sort of the full panoply of what you might do if you were going to look at the regional agreement. Not really meaning here to get into any deep discussion again. I think this is something that we'll want to talk about at the workshop in the fall. David and I and Lori have talked about doing some things over the summer with some of the members of the communities that would have to be involved in this process, just to get a sense for whether or not there's the level of interest and commitment to do something with this. But certainly, think about this over the summer. I know if we started on a conversation about this, it could be lengthy. But if there are things that people took away from the presentation that they want to highlight, then feel free. But again, just sort of recognizing we had that it's sort of an ongoing thing, and something that we, as we get into next year, will first have to make a decision about whether to move forward in the process or not, and then if we do, then there'll be the challenge of figuring out how extensive is that going to be. But we'll try to come to next year with some sense of those away from the table who who we'd need to have buy-in from if we were going to partake in this, because it's not trivial, and it's unusual for our deliberations to be so dependent upon the buy-in from other elected and appointed officials in both communities. So, you know, it's not to be taken lightly.
I think that would be very useful, doing an exploration, because I think we can't talk in a vacuum.
Yeah.
It's not just us. So.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I haven't been here in the last meeting when I watched the video, listened to the presentation. I think it's going to be, honestly, I think it's going to be a very long, extremely frustrating process. I was not extremely impressed with the presentation. And I think that we have other priorities. My request to the administration, Jared, and to Lori, is that maybe during the summer before the workshop they can come with some language to tackle a possible amendment only on the really one important question, and that's the enrollment and how do we actually not have surprises but measure it over 3 years, and which I think is the only thing that really is extremely important. And then we should tackle how do we do it, whether we can try and do an amendment as a standalone and not enter into the whole process. But altogether, I think that the process will be extremely frustrating because it's not, as Wally says, it's not in our hands. We can do a year-long process, and in one of the town meetings we'll not approve it, and we'll.
I think that's.
It's not a priority. It's just, you know, we've got too much on our hands.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons it's important to make sure that, you know, we're not doing this in a vacuum, and that there is recognized value among the other participants in this. David, do you have anything? Okay.
Good.
Okay. Thank you, Yvonne. Can we
have some idea for language?
I think what we can give you, Jared's already been doing this because he can't help himself, playing with look at how the different formulas play out if you apply them, so you can start to be more informed on that. I think then that's probably the most important information you need, both for Concord and Carlisle, and then as a committee you decide if that breeds an interest in looking at language or not. Because it really is it's more of a formula than language per se when it comes to that.
Yeah.
So we can definitely provide that.
As I think Mr. Morales said during the last years, you know, it's changing something that was working for 45 years. So maybe it's not a priority.
I will make a comment on the smoothing, you know, which would be nice to have, but I believe, and I agree with you, it'll be a long, difficult process, and we owe it, I think, to ourselves and the communities to work a different path first, which is educating the two FinComs and tuning up their modeling skills, because it's a math problem. It can be modeled, and we have plenty of data to show that there's predictability to the ratios over years, and they have to factor it in, and they can do that, but they have to have a collective will to do it, and to make us go through hoops, you know, maybe we can amend it, but if we have to reopen to amend it and go through all this, you know, multi-stage thing, when we didn't do the easier thing, which is to get the FinComs to do their job, we ought to do that first. That's my opinion.
We have to tackle the one thing that is really a must.
No, what's a must is predictability to the budget. Smoothing is a convenience. Predictability is important.
Okay, so good. I think there are, you know, there are a number of things and a lot to think about with this. So
There we
you know,
go.
we'll certainly come back with some more input and awareness. So new business, the thing we've all been waiting for.
No, finally, finally.
Principal Mr.
Sorry to make you wait so long.
I did did notice that Miss Thornton's smile was really large when she was leaving. All right, so thank you for having me. My name is Mike Petullo, principal at the high school. And before I kick off the school improvement plan, I just did want to make a quick note about Q5. We did start today. They made the two young ladies, school committee reps made reference to it, and always have to take an opportunity to thank the PA and the CEF for funding starting this last year. And today was day one. It was tremendous. One course they didn't mention is Brian and I are running Q5 Amazing Race. It's actually the largest course with 80 kids. And today we spent our day in Carlisle and Concord. I was in Carlisle all day, and just a really quick note of some folks that in both towns that were just amazing. So we had 80 kids go through Clark Farm, the Carlisle Police Department, Police and Library, Carlisle Middle School, Caldwell Banker, Ferns, in Concord. We did Shop for a Cause.
They took over Carlisle.
Shop for a Cause at Crosby's that benefited Open Table. They were fantastic. Cabron Savings. We did a scavenger hunt at the library. We were at Blue, Community Chest, and again, Open Table. And there's just been some parents, Julia O'Brien, Sue Bumpus, Joanne Jensen, Jen Clark, and Tracy Morano. It's just been a tremendous effort. And today was just a really good day, even in the rain. And we were rain or shine. And when it was 2 months ago, and we were saying, yeah, it's part of the experience. And then as I was looking at the weather last time, I'm like, wow, this is going to be real bad. And it wasn't bad. And so the kids, they got really dirty. They kept a great attitude, and we had a tremendous amount of fun. Tomorrow we're in Boston. Thursday at Wachusett, Friday in Boston. So just wanted to do a plug there. Yeah, it's been
Oh my gosh.
Okay. So I will do my best to be brief here. We're talking about our school improvement plan. And so I'm just going to start right at. So goal one, and I hate at presentations when someone reads slides, but unfortunately I'm going to read a lot of slides to you tonight. But goal one is to implement tiered levels of support to meet the academic and social emotional behavioral needs of all students in grade 9. And so this is really your RTI model. I think it's worth a little bit of a definition of what RTI is. It's a multi-tiered approach to the early identification and support of students with learning and or behavior, social, emotional needs. There are 3 tiers. And it really is about making decisions in both general ed and special ed and creating a well-integrated system of instruction and intervention guided by student data outcomes. And Sharon, the elementary schools do this really well. Sharon's been a great resource. And just learning how their data team functions, and it's a little bit harder at a high school level to implement an RTI system, but we are getting there. But it's really about identifying needs early with a structured system of support and making sure it's data driven. So the process begins with my universal screen all students, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. And what happens is as a result of the data that we get, struggling learners are provided with interventions at increasing levels of intensity to accelerate their rate of learning. And we have progress monitoring that's built in during those 4 to 8 week interventions. And so educational decisions about the intensity and duration of interventions are based on individual student response to the instruction they're receiving in Tier 2 typically. So that's a very quick definition because it does lead right into our first goal, which was we identified and implemented universal screeners for ELA, math, and social emotional learning. For ELA and math, we use the STAR Renaissance program. And for the social emotional learning, we use the PEER. I'll talk a little bit about more of that in a second. We also identified existing interventions and programs utilizing RTI at the high school. And really what we had is a system of a lot of RTI models in our school. I'll show you a list of them. Without calling it RTI. And really what we need, and we still need, it's about coalescing all that. We have a lot of programs and people doing great things with kids, but really no system connecting them all. And so, kids might be identified and then go into a certain program, but there's not a lot like a data team that's kind of looking at all of interventions and how these can be integrated and more cohesive. So our early release path this year focused primarily on RTI. So we had 4 early release, we call them paths. Really there were 4 PD opportunities, 4 staff, thankfully to the school committee for allowing us this opportunity to have early release this year. And so those were instructional methods, interdisciplinary learning, social emotional learning, and teen mental health, with cultural competency embedded in all of them. But the special ed model which it's a little misleading, but that was our RTI path. So we had about 120 staff that were equally divided between those 4, but that was a great learning experience there. We did create an RTI data team that met once a week. The model as it's implemented is you have individuals from a cross-section of departments that meet to really talk about kids, for lack of a better way, reviewing data and talk about what interventions can be used and finding out is there overlap with what we're seeing in English or social studies. The big issue at the high school is the scheduling component. And I'm not saying it's easy to do anywhere, but when you have a team model and everyone has the same prep or the class the same blocks off, it's easier than when you're trying to identify 20 kids and where can we have interventions when their schedules, it's just high school schedule is much more dynamic. And some of the other challenges are getting kids to buy in. And we don't want to take them out of their core instructional classes, so that means it usually is a free block. And I think we all know teenagers pretty well. Some buy in and do great. Others, they'd rather have their free time, and that's understandable. And if a student is struggling in an area, sometimes they don't want to be reminded more than they need to that they're really struggling in this area. So it does make sense. Also, we had 8 staff members trained in LOI reading program. Again, the challenge is scheduling, but really excited to have folks trained, thanks to the district for supporting that. And we were kind of shocked, to be quite honest. It's not a staggering number of how many kids were reading below grade level. It's a very small percentage, but it still is quite striking when you see there's, even if it's a handful of kids that are reading at a middle school level, and we're not doing anything at the high school level to address those needs, it's no wonder they're going to struggle in all academic areas. So it's been really helpful with the universal screener to identify those students.
Hey, Mike,
Do you mind if I
do you want to just go on through? Or?
If you don't mind, I would like to zip through because I might answer your question, and then if you have some questions for me. So this is just a sample screener. The sample screener results, it's none of our students, but just to give you an idea of what we see after the universal screener. So your green is at or above benchmark. Your blue would be on watch. Your yellow would be intervention, and then the red would be urgent intervention. The benchmark that's provided by Renaissance is a national benchmark, and truthfully, our kids were far exceeding that. We ultimately settled on a benchmark because you can use the MCAS benchmark. I think there's a solid argument to make that benchmark higher. However, we have limited capacity too. So as we're developing this new approach, we can't identify more kids than we can service. So it's still a work in progress, but feeling really good about where we are so far. And again, just to give you a little visual about what we would see in terms of the results of students, the aggregate. And so we'll get a scaled score that compare performance over time and across grade level, a GE, which is called grade equivalent, compare students nationally, then a percentile rank, a ranking of students compared to others at the same grade across the nation. So it's just, there's some really cool tools that can really help us do our job well. And just not to get too deep into the details here, but you can see the student name blocked off, but star reading scaled score suggests that these skills from the core progress reading built for mass learning progressions would be challenging but not too difficult for him. So then we'll get really granular down bottom. The score suggests so-and-so is ready for instruction and practice with the following skills: analyzing plot structure and development, analyzing characters, analyzing how authors reveal character, etc., etc. So now moving on to the SEL, which admittedly is a little more difficult, social emotional learning. So essentially the universal screener focused on 10 scales, and of those 10, we focused on 3, primarily 2. Relationships with peers, relationships with adults, and also optimism. And so what does that look like? I do want to go back. So taking this data, it really helped us inform guidance counselors before they met with their freshman students. And what does that look like? We don't want the guidance counselor saying, we've reviewed your universal screener, and it's more of saying, okay, so how are they doing relationships with peers, relationships with adults, and it allows really to ask probing questions about how they're doing socially, how they're doing with connecting with adults. If they had if their optimism was way below the standard, trying to really identify the root of that and what systems of support can we have in the school to support the student. So very much a work in progress, but also been a helpful tool so far. And these are the potential elements of RTI that we have at the high school. And so we do have a lot of very specific programs to help kids, and a lot of them really do meet the RTI criteria. And again, it's really about just trying to have a system where we're communicating and sharing data, sharing information. So on to goal 2, create a collaborative and inclusive culture at CCHS and in the community that values diversity and recognizes the contributions and uniqueness of each person. You can see the strategic connection below. So continue to actively recruit and maintain a diverse staff in the district. We've really made some a very specific and effort there and are making some progress. Partner with students and families from our freestanding schools, creating more opportunities for students and families to engage in community building activities. And it's really looking just to bring people together. Some great example from this year was we had a multicultural food fair. And one of those events where you're promoting it and you don't know if 20 people are going to show up or if 100, and sometimes 200 plus people from 46 countries show up. It was an amazing event. Ray Pavlik and student government deserve all the credit for that, but a great example of just outreach to the community. And also being really deliberate about going to Boston when we can, having meetings at the MECO office. We had the MECO Awards was in Boston this year for the first time. Just to try to meet parents where they are and kids where they are, and making it less challenging to always come here. So just a review of ongoing professional development, so staff can enhance their skills to both recognize and effectively respond to conflict, as I mentioned earlier, embedded cultural competency in all of our early release paths. So looking at those 4 paths that I outlined before through a cultural competency lens. Also, we have Concord Fellows classes and others. Using advisory to also address some of these areas. And goal 3, create a learning culture where all members of the community share a common understanding regarding the goals and roles of work assigned outside of the classroom. Faculty will incorporate differentiation into their homework work as well. So, this is still very much a work in progress. So when it says reaffirm homework practices and coordinated assessment days, there has been a tremendous amount of work since Challenge Success and even really before, recognizing that the workload can be pretty intense in our current environment. And so coordinated testing days are around end of quarter, end of semester. So if someone doesn't have 5 assessments on Friday and you have no more than 2 a day, it's not a perfect system. I do think it's working well, but even some of the kids would argue that, will argue against it in sometimes. For example, well, we had to, the semester doesn't end until Friday, I'm being assessed on Monday, so it creates a little bit of disjointed curriculum. So there are some valid points against, however, I think the pros outweigh the cons, and anyone taking more than 2 assessments in a day, it's just simply too much. And reaffirming homework practices, setting a goal of no more than 30 minutes per subject per night. Again, not a perfect calculus, but reaffirming those. This year we also implemented reading period before exams. That was based on student feedback. We're saying we felt like we were going right up until exams with content being tested and then right into exams, and it was just too much. So 2 days before exams, we're just straight review, no new material. And I think the kids took advantage of it. We also had office hours. I did tend to see a few more kids at Starbucks that week, actually, with one kid joking, I really love these reading periods. But I do think it really is important to just make sure that we stop the material and we can focus on the bigger exam. We added additional no schoolwork weekends. We already have over school breaks, no schoolwork. We already had 6 embedded into our schedule, and now we have 10, so it works out to be 1 a month. And by adding these 4, it made really sense the timing. One is around Kids for Cancer, just because it's a community event, there's so many kids involved. And the others were quite easy actually around the end of quarters. Just an opportunity just to stop and refresh. So excited about that as well. It's still very much a work in progress. So just this is just looking ahead. These are not defining goals by any stretch of the imagination, but things that we're looking at for next year. Our freshman transition. We have a committee together that really wants to look about what it means to onboard students to their freshman year, and we're looking to make a really concerted effort to strengthen that transition to high school, knowing it's a challenge and really transition at any level. Grading practices, which is that one is, we could go in 30 different directions, that one, but really just thinking about assessment, thinking about how we're using Aspen in our online grading system. Does it make sense to actually stop after 1 quarter to give a grade at an arbitrary date that we've just chopped up into fourths? Or does it make more sense to do it over a full year? So we do have Earth Science that is piloted that this year. Takes away a little bit of the pressure of the test right before the end of the quarter. So some interesting things that might come out of that. Social emotional learning, also will continue that effort, just the mental health of our students, and looking at our telescope.
Before we take, do you mind?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Before we take questions, I just want to sort of frame where we are with our improvement plans and the strategic plan, and give you a little big picture view that'll pertain to all the plans as you hear them tonight. A year ago we finished our strategic planning process in June. So we made a decision with the support of the committee to not write improvement plans for this school year, 18-19, last spring before the strategic plan was finished. The strategic plan outlines our district goals, objectives, and initiatives. So to do them in reverse order wasn't logical. So that means this fall, the principals came back and wrote improvement plans dovetailing off the strategic plan. And I've had a different window to work with in terms of implementation, because by the time that happened in September and into October, we're now reporting back to you with a shorter time frame. So they're in different places in terms of establishing the goals for next year. So tonight, I think we really are here to focus on this school year and giving you updates on the work that's happened. And then we'll be back in the fall with the plans all realigned. And then next year, we'll get back on track with the spring goal setting for the coming year. Just needed a little bit of time to get readjusted because of the timing of the strategic plan, which I think value add was that we are all on the same page in terms of where the direction is, and now the buildings are taking each of those and with their school advisory councils, weaning that down into what does that mean for their school, and then working with the staff and working with the parents and kids directly on outcomes and steps to achieve those. So when we get it all lined up and synced up on a really given day where we can see it all, the goals up at the strategic plan level are really aligning with the school improvement plan goals, which even continues on very much into the educator evaluation goals and down. So that's how the work really stays focused, and I think we've seen the fruits of some of that labor. We got a little work to do on process alignment and documentation and timing, but the benefits are already, no question, starting to show. So just bear with the fact that we're still getting these plans synced back up, but we haven't missed the processes in terms of their integrity of being building based. They're just looking towards a systemic direction now, which feels really good. So this tonight is really about this year's work, and then we'll come back in the fall to talk about 19-20.
And if I can, I just want to sort of add a little bit to what Laura just said and frame what our responsibilities are here. We come up with district goals, which are going to be informed this year by our strategic visioning exercise, which was lengthy and in-depth. And then those are utilized for Lori's goals and the goals of what we want to see implemented. These school improvement plans are part and parcel of site-based process, which is the school advisory committees and the building administration and faculty to come up with their plans. We certainly can offer comments and insights and thoughts about those, but it's not something we vote on. It's basically theirs to produce, and then ours to, yes, it rolls up to us, but it's not, I think we need to be somewhat careful about sort of digging into the weeds and trying to, push too much on how these things are being determined and decided at the school level to implement. So, questions for Mike?
I'll just throw out a comment quickly, having obviously listened to these for a little while. First of all, it's great stuff, and I love hearing this and everything we're doing. And particularly this year, I feel like you're standing here saying it's a work in progress. I feel like, oh my gosh, how much you've gotten done this year. And what an amazing overview of stuff that you can really sink your teeth into. We're not just talking high level, we want our students to perform well. You took some themes that have really come out that we've all, several of us have talked about for years or heard about. That freshman transition, the homework topic, and instead of those being side topics that might get addressed, you've really dug into them, and it's really neat to see those as areas of focus and to see the progress that's being made. So yes, every good thing is a work in progress probably, but I just want you to take credit that there's been a lot of progress made on those fronts, and it's really neat to see.
Appreciate that.
So Mike, could you take a moment to speak to the assessment piece? It strikes me that can inform the interventions. The look that you shared with us suggests it also could have quite a degree of complexity to it, and therefore be a time burden. And I know teachers and administrators want to do very good assessment, but also want to do very good direct service. And
it's a good point. The universal screener itself takes roughly 20 minutes, maybe a little more. Some can take, some students might take a lot longer, but it is meant to be a relatively quick diagnostic.
Got it.
And not just the universal screener is not the only data point, right? What are we seeing in the classroom? Does it really, does it mesh with what the teacher is seeing? And then allowing that student 4 to 8 weeks of intervention, and then taking that same assessment again. That would then, if it's 4 months later, you can see that the GE, which is the grade equivalent, gives you where they should be 10th grade, 9th grade, 4th month, 9.4. So we did have kids that would test out of it, for example. But it can't be too onerous, to your point, because it does take up time in the classroom. And that is challenging. Okay, so we chose different subject matters to implement each one. So it was spread across 3 different subject matters.
Was it difficult to customize it for CCHS?
So the assessment itself is a STAR assessment that we just adopt.
Okay.
And that helps you norm nationally, and also obviously every student taking the same testing ability is quite helpful. But it's also based on mass standards, so.
Okay.
I have a follow-up question on it too. Sorry, Cynthia's on.
Well, I was going to say, every student or every 9th grader?
Every 9th grader.
Okay, I was like,
Yeah.
ooh.
Yeah. Did you find many surprises? For instance, students who, are coming to you getting straight A's, but are taking an assessment and you're realizing, wow, there are weaknesses here. Maybe they're struggling at home more than you realize. Maybe, there's something else going on. Were there many surprises like that?
There were a few.
Or vice versa?
Even though the number was small, the number of students that were reading below grade level, some very far below grade level, that was a little shocking.
Yeah.
Some of the data did not mesh. Kids were doing really well and they didn't perform well in this. And then, even though we had a script explaining what happens if you don't do well,
right.
Some kids, didn't really listen very well and then just kind of raced through it. And then when they were putting they were gonna be put into an intervention block, they were like, whoa, wait a minute.
Wait, what happened? That really mattered.
Shut up. So there was a little bit of that. But for the most part, it was shocking how the data really was just giving us what we already knew.
Interesting.
The granular component of it, meaning how far it drills down, is quite helpful, telling you what skills they've identified to support kids. Now the challenge is, we don't have a set curriculum for those kids. The LLI is a reading program, which we would. But for math, we don't have a set curriculum. There are some vendors, including Star Renaissance, that have some programs that you can use that we've looked at. And then we've really just used staff to assess them daily, not like an assessment firm, but to really work with them daily and decide what skills to work on.
So Mike, I need some calibration. I mean, kids who come in with IEPs have been getting that more or less at 8th grade level and middle school presumably, and I know your team goes right after those. So these are kids who are typically, I mean, I guess all the kids take the assessment, but the kids you're finding gaps in, let's say, have not been on IEPs or 504.
Yeah, so they have not been identified.
They've not been identified previously, right?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And should this tool be really put to 8th grade, like 8th grade spring, to everybody, as opposed to coming in at 9th and then you've got weeks spent kind of sorting all that out?
Yeah.
Couldn't you push that into the system, so we're not that many systems?
That was the goal at the beginning of the year. Justin and I collaborated a few times trying to get that done. It is one of those things that it's in December, it's a great idea. And then when it comes to the end of the year, you realize how much assessing we're doing for kids at the state level and the local level, and how many days are tied up. We just couldn't get it done this year. We'd like to do that the following year, because if we can have it built into their schedule, it does make it easier, it makes buy-in easier.
You'll have time to plan. I mean, you'll know what you've got, but we all know no learning happens in June anyway, so you might as well take an assessment. But
Lori.
I don't know about that.
But, all right, so the assessment benchmarks, and so that's the test part. So the R part of RTI, well, I'm sorry, the I part is then close work by teacher. Where does the resource come in?
So if it's a tier 2,
Yeah.
then you have someone who is, you have staff members that are pulling kids out for an intervention block or pushing in. They're going into a classroom, but we've used
kind of like a SPED model, or a 504 model, I guess, right? But much less, I'm thinking.
It's much different. It would be done by, for example, a math teacher would be providing intervention in math to address the skills, the gaps that we've seen based on the results of the assessment. In tier 1, those are just good teaching strategies in the classroom. And that's, your goal is 85%.
So you factored in some time that the 9th grade teachers have to do that, right?
So we had specific teachers to do it. So that was a full part of their schedule.
So, but I mean, prior even to doing the assessment, you had some sense of what that load would be and who would do it.
Yes.
And then the R part is what? How well they improve with 12 weeks? What's the period?
So it's 4 to 8 weeks for your short-term interventions. Then you make a decision, are they going to go back into the classroom? Do we need a higher intensity intervention, or are they going to be tested?
If it's higher, then you're actually pushing them into a...
They would be, ideally they would then just, they're never removed from their class, but they're no longer getting the intervention. And we backfilled the gap that they were missing.
Okay, and then to switch out of that to the other two goals, how do you square 2.5 hours of homework a night with social emotional?
Yeah, 2.5 hours.
Because I mean, we all hear that, again, as an incoming, parent of an incoming 9th grader.
So there was a tremendous amount of homework work done by a homework committee, and made a research-based decision that said, after 2.5 hours, the kids are getting nothing out of it, and it really drops off a cliff. 2.5 hours does still sound like a pretty lengthy night of homework, and it's not a perfect calculus, as I said, at the 9th grade. It might take me an hour, it might only take you 15 minutes, so it's a challenge, but 2.5 hours is what we want to be the maximum, not the average or the standard, but no more than.
But is there a coordination between teachers that actually guarantees this maximum?
I'm sorry, can you repeat? Coordination?
Is there a coordination between teachers and subjects that actually guarantees this, that it will not be kind of a...
No, in truth.
So how can you guarantee the 2.5 hours?
Well, you can have no more than 30 minutes a night in your subject. If you adhere to that, there's no way for them to have more than 2.5 hours. So ideally, we would like to have coordination amongst all departments. It is really challenging, but it is something we're looking at. So we do with coordinating assessment days, but we would like more coordination across, bigger projects, assessments. But you can imagine with 5, 6 classes, it can be a challenge. Doesn't mean it's not. It's impossible.
I just want to ask Dr. Hunter a question. For Concord Public Schools, we're having these kind of screeners all throughout.
Yeah, you're going to hear that the same tools are being used.
For the most part, we hope there are not too many surprises, at least kids coming from Concord in the 9th grade.
Yeah, or Carlisle either, I think.
Yeah,
without saying more than we should about who these kids were this fall, they were kids new to us, so I think that we were thrilled to have caught them because we didn't have the history coming from the other schools, so I think it served its purpose really well. We did have kids, get math intervention in place out to go back to the regular math curriculum, so I think the successes were there. The call that I got this fall when the data came in was, now I know who the kids are, how are we going to fix, what are we going to do for them? And that was the work we needed to put in, and I think Mike's team really exceeded the goals because the goal really was to get the screener in place and have the data to work with, and what we learned was once you have the data, you cannot do nothing. And that accelerated a little more of an ad hoc plan than we would have thought, but an effective one. So I think this coming year will be the place to sort of regroup it and figure out how the scheduling part works and the committed staff to it and the tools we're going to use, and solidify it another step further.
Yeah, I think that
another challenge too on Dr. Hunter is typically you see students that if they're not performing well in one, they're also not performing well in the other, then you have to decide what you're going to address first.
But if I understand right, the bulk, they're always, in your school improvement plan, you're actually dealing with how to solve the problem once you get it. But the bulk of the surprise is in reading. So that's actually a message maybe to the middle school.
No, because the number is so small.
Okay.
It was just
so it's a bulk of the surprise, but it's still
yes,
a very small number.
It's a very small number. But when you see how low a particular student might be reading below grade level, and there's just, you wonder how are they ever going to succeed if we don't get them caught up. And an RTI model is really not typical in high school. We tried to look at other schools' RTI models. There's not a lot, and there's a few that have them, and they're okay, and they have an intervention block. It's to your bell schedule question. But even the LLI program that we have, we're really happy to have it. But it is generally for lower grades. There's not a lot of these type of programs at a high school level. So luckily we have a lot of really good staff. They're dedicated that can do this work. So.
I find this is a wonderful idea to bring in this program to sort of bridge those gaps that kids may have in their education, whether it's ELA or math, where you can catch it, and it definitely improves the well-being as well, because education is such an important part of the children's self-esteem. In terms of when the 8th graders are coming in, are you able to test them before they're assigned to a class to sort of coordinate the particular type of students that might be better put together as a herd, as a population in a particular class, or is that still sort of evolving as you guys are going through the process?
So the majority of it is based on teacher recommendation from in the middle school. There are some assessments as well, and obviously student and parent input impacts that as well. But ideally, we would like to have these assessments done in the spring of 8th grade too. So, after Steve can make
Okay.
I just want to say, your familiarity with all of this suggests that you're a leader in many ways, but certainly an instructional leader. You're very close to this, and that's something that we're impressed with,
I
grateful
appreciate that. I
for.
mean, I'm standing up here and doing the presentation, there's a lot of people that are working really, really hard behind the scenes, and so that deserve the bulk of the credit, but I appreciate it. All right, thank you.
Thank you
Mike.
so much.
Appreciate the time. So, since there are no changes to the handbook, we won't ask Mike to come back up.
Yeah, I don't think we need him to come say there are no changes.
Say there are no
do we?
changes to that book, there we go.
So we have a couple of regional action items before we adjourn. And bear with me 1 second here.
I can't connect it, I can't read it.
You want me to move on?
Can you move it? I
Yeah,
can't.
can I have a
finish.
motion?
Yeah.
I can, do you want to read it, Gordon?
Sure. I move that the Concord-Carlisle Regional School Committee and the Concord Public School Committee vote to approve the fiscal '20 salary increases for non-bargaining employees.
Second for both.
Is there any discussion on this? Seeing none.
So let's say, because we do this only occasionally, those non-union personnel support all of the instructional staff here that support all the kids, so they're an integral part of everything that happens here, and their role is not a small one. We're grateful for it.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And I think I'd just comment that the percentage increase you're approving is in line with all of the union-based contracts, so that we're all staying synced up with one another.
Good. Absolutely. Echo our support of them.
So all in favor for the region?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
And all in favor for Concord?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
And
We have, I move that the Concord-Carlisle School Committee votes to approve Ray Pavlik's overnight trip to Martha's Vineyard from September 14, 2019 to September 15, 2019, with the condition that a signed liability waiver is received from all participants.
Second.
any discussion?
Is he going alone?
Just one, when he refers to a game against Martha's Vineyard, is this high
Soccer.
school? Is it the
High school soccer team.
That's good.
And
Yeah.
we're meeting Martha's Vineyard High School.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
I keep waiting for the school committee invitations to these.
I know,
Especially on
really.
the
Keep waiting.
Any other comments? So, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. And I would take a motion to adjourn the regional school committee meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
All right.
Alrighty.
Can we,
2-minute break, yeah.
2 minutes, 5 minutes?
We won't take long.
Yeah.
I know, everybody's waiting, I'm sorry. We just need a 2-minute bio break.
4 hours.
I need,
You guys.
Because
yes, we
when
can.
they're done,
Then they're gonna
They're
get
gonna wanna
it.
go
So let's do that first. Because we skipped a recognition earlier, and we
Come on up here
know
with
that
us.
Sharon Young
Come
loves
up
to be
here.
recognized.
Put
But
your
we
phone
can't,
away.
but we can't let her get away without recognizing that Sharon Young, who is retiring and leaving us, is here presenting to us for the last time. And we wanted to say a little something. Now, we all could have sat here and said, wow, we've seen amazing things, and kind of from the outside and what we've seen, but really the one of us, and I'll still call her one of us, who has experienced life with you at Alcott the most is Joanna. And although she's no longer in the committee, she agreed to say something, and then we didn't want to keep her here all night. So I'm going to read what Joanna wrote, if that's okay. Dear Sharon, thank you. And again, this is from Joanna Boynton, or written by her. But on behalf of the Concord Public Schools and the Concord School Committee, I want to express to you our deepest and most sincere thanks for your commitment, dedication, and leadership while you served as principal at Alcott. When I first met you, I was a nervous first mom about to send our first kid to kindergarten. And 16 years later, with 4 Alcott graduates, you are a mentor, a role model, and a friend. Alcott, under your leadership, became the example of how to try new things and problem solve in collaborative ways, while always maintaining a high standard for the rest of the schools and district. You never stop thinking about what is best for kids. They are at the center of your decisions. I witnessed the remarkable growth in academic rigor and individualized learning at Alcott. I witnessed creative decision-making by you and your staff. You introduced more comprehensive curriculum while including your colleagues in the very real work of how to approach new standards and initiatives. You are a leader who is not afraid to get her hands dirty and do the real work. You never ask your staff to do anything you are not willing to stand side by side with them and do. You are the consummate team player, and no one, I mean no one, works harder and longer hours than you. The level of commitment is rare and impressive, and for that we are not only grateful and appreciative, but also the beneficiaries of your high standards and success. You also never lose your sense of humor. It is one of my, and I'll make this our, favorite traits. No back to school night is laden with more uplifting and humorous words than yours at Alcott. You take the voices of kids and experiences with students and bring them to life in a heartwarming and funny way. It reminds us all to appreciate the humor and fun in what we do with these kids. And you are never afraid to try new things. Alcott was the epicenter of the pilots. Need a place to try the new Medco model? Pilot it at Alcott. Want to study how after-school curriculum enrichment affects kids? Pilot it at Alcott. How to try an entirely new math curriculum or trying the new PARC test on the computer? Try it at Alcott. You were challenged by new programs and out-of-the-box thinking. The bigger the challenge, the more you loved it. When the district wanted to try new things, you were always the first to raise your hand. And by doing so, you made us all better. Better teachers, better administrators, better parents. You are clear in your expectations, and that has earned you the highest respect among your colleagues, your staff, and your community. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention how much I learned from you. I am a better parent because of what I witnessed and what you taught me, often just by watching. I learned how to talk to my kids with respect and clarity, and I am forever grateful for that. Sharon, you have given so much to this school, this district, this town. Thank you from all of us. We hope your retirement days are filled with travel, reading, puttering around the house, and enjoying your family. It is so well deserved, and we will miss you dearly. Please come back and visit. With gratitude, Joanna, but I will say that everything that she writes here is truly on behalf of the school committee. And although we didn't all get to have kids go through Alcott, we have all seen from the view that we get what an amazing experience has come out of there, and the growth even that we've seen over several years, and the parents who come out raving, and the way she talks about how she learned as a parent is only one of many. So you've affected so many families and students over the years. Thank you from all of us.
Thank you. Usually not at a loss for words. I'm at a loss for words, but thank you. That was very nice.
Thank you for all you've done and for being here with us for a last time tonight. And we'll try to move along so we don't keep you here until tomorrow at the rate that we're going.
Field trip tomorrow.
Right, okay. Okay, so now we will let you jump in.
So all three of us will be presenting for you.
Good.
For clarity's sake, Sharon Young, Matt Lucy.
Angel Charles Thoreau. Can I say something?
Please.
This is a year where I feel like the reason why we can do this and stand up here in front of you together and be presenting is because we work so closely this year. So that's been, if nothing else, I think that this is symbolic of the level of coherence and closeness that we've developed as a bond. So we'll miss you, and
thanks.
Yeah, this is nice.
I'll think of you when I'm in
Sure.
Or traveling.
Think of you fondly.
So what we say is not necessarily going to match the slides because the slides were done on a school-by-school basis. So we are going to talk about things that we've done that are in common and then also things that are unique to our buildings, if that makes sense.
Great. And all aligned to our district strategic plan, so you'll see a lot of continuity. And again, to Angel's point about how we shared best practice, learned from each other, and built on. So you may find some times where we said yes, and it began here, and now it's happening here, or it happened somewhere else, and we're taking that and moving it forward. So we're very fortunate.
You've already seen this slide with the strategic objective number 1. It's just a duplicate, and this is our interpretation of how we've been working on it and the progress that we've made. So we did a ton of professional development this year. And these are all things that happened at Willard, but I can also say that all of our students have been now receiving a very high level of very tiered interventions from different schools. So I would say across all 3 schools, we're all using Empower. We're using Foundations, the Lucy Calkins Writing Units of Studies with the accompanying rubrics. Wilson, Level Literacy Intervention, Open Circle, Think Give. Is there anything that I'm missing?
And we're engaging with the STEAM lab, but also working on STEAM and initiatives within our school, so it's just not a one-off, but rather something that we do regularly. The Rivers and Revolutions, which is the high school program that is part of the 5th grade experience at Willard, is going to be expanding into the other buildings moving forward, and that's exciting. And then also exploring different progress monitoring tools, whether it be a benchmark assessment system, which is really leading the charge at Thoreau, or Columbia Teachers Colleges. We're reinvesting in our staff to make sure that the assessments are being done, and we can manage monitor the growth as accurate as possible.
Ditto.
Okay, the second strategic objective is around well-being, and across the board, we have all implemented a new unit of the Open Circle curriculum that's focused on mindfulness, which is fantastic. We did not yet adopt the social emotional screener, the PAIR, but we're looking forward to piloting it next year across all 3 schools, correct? You're not doing the PAIR?
No, you piloted something else.
We are piloting something else.
Because she piloted.
Because that's what she
Well, we'll see how you, well.
No, it'll be good to see.
Yeah.
And then we'll compare against.
What tool we
We'll compare,
compare.
yes. So, yes, we are doing something a little different.
Across all schools, we have our own unique positive behavioral intervention systems that we continue to use. I'll say 2 goals that were specific to Thoreau. 1, we had 20 students in 5th grade participate in a 3-week executive functioning Tier 2 intervention that was provided in collaboration between a 5th grade special education teacher along with our school psychologist, just to give them that little extra boost that they might need before they take the CMS's version of the same course. And we also really focus on increasing opportunities for students with significant learning challenges to be included in the general education setting.
Also working with the Concord Middle School and their team as they're developing some really rich programming and transition practices. Kudos to Justin and his staff for reaching out and collaborating with the elementaries to ensure that we're putting the kids in the best place from the very first day of 6th grade. So we're very excited to continue that.
We've really expanded on this part, on the well-being aspect of things. We've focused on Tier 1 interventions and have expanded to Tier 2 and Tier 3. The screener that we're using will drive some of that discussion, and with some of that data, we are looking at 2 classrooms that we're hoping to pilot the screener in, and then helping drive some of that support. We've done quite a bit of Tier 1 instruction across like 1st grade. We've done a zones curriculum, and we've taught all 1st graders about zones and their own bodies in space, and are you in the green zone, are you really in the red zone kind of thing. And then each 1st grade classroom has their own zones corners to try and teach kids to be able to access when they need a break and when they can get themselves back into the grade. So we're looking at the well-being aspect of things as really building that Tier 1 and then giving us screeners to kind of move into the Tier 2 and Tier 3 aspects of service. We also have, and that kind of goes back to the other slide, but we also are starting a new social emotional program at Alcott for students who need Tier 3 intervention.
I just want to add to that, because the communication among the 3 of them led to some of the lists of programs you saw where we started to see like needs across schools and realized that trying to meet, and each of them has a story of a couple of kids they personally supported this year in extraordinary ways. It also, though, allowed us to step back and say, is this the best way to do this, where each 3 times over. Each principal and the staff they're working with is so honed in on individual needs. Or can we cluster kids and give them a better environment with peers in a supported setting? And I think the work that they did to communicate and look at those cohorts of kids and look at how we might structure programming is phenomenal. I mean, all I did was say, do you want to talk about it? And they sat together, brought the lists, and started to see like needs, and have really put a vision together for really well-served programs for kids in the fall. And I think better serving the leadership of the school as well, because for a principal to be spending as much time as these 3 have this year on individual or a couple of kids is extraordinary, but there's a cost to that. And I think we're going to get a balance that will be beneficial to everyone. But I can't, if you heard eventually in private, I'll tell you the lengths to which these 3 have gone to service kids this year. I mean, it's unbelievable, frankly. So we're very blessed for all that they offer to our kids.
Yeah. Another aspect of well-being is the hiring of the new principal for Alcott. So Naomi Crayco and I have been in communication, and she'll begin July 1 as I fade away. She's excited, can't wait, and has lots of questions, and I've given her lots of materials that I overwhelmed her a tad, month by month actually, in my organizational structure.
Our third strategic objective is around building a more inclusive culture. All of our teachers attended all 3 district-wide offerings on our speaker series. We had Principal Cafiel come and speak. We had Beverly Daniel Tatum. Most recently, we had Dr. Derek Gayking, who were fantastic and inspiring and really helped us to spark conversations, really important conversations, around how we can better support our students to feel like they can bring their true, authentic selves, all parts of themselves, with them when they come into school. So those are really powerful. And then at the building level, we also had various initiatives to create a more inclusive culture.
So at Willard, we had an old school read, why do all black kids sit together in the cafeteria? And we used that as a jumping off point. We brought in someone to help us create a timeline of our actions throughout the year. And we committed to ourselves every time we gathered as a faculty, we would be talking about race, ethnicity, and welcoming culture. There was a lot of reflection, a lot of great conversations, and I think we're better for it. I think one highlight for us this year is there was an international fair that we organized, and it was one where people said they felt valued and welcomed. That rather than becoming homogenized, it was a celebration of our differences, and it was just what the doctor ordered. It was an empowering evening, and we felt that that is who we are, and that's what we want to be, and that's how we act as mirrors and also as windows for each other. We looked at the types of books that we're asking our students to read, our classroom libraries. Are they reflective of the world? Are they reflective of the Western canon? And what does that mean, and what do we say? Is it representative of gender? Is it representative of our culture as a whole and of the rest? So we've been doing a lot of really good thinking and acting upon some of these hard decisions that we have to ask of ourselves. And then also after attending Waking Up White, another opportunity for us to reflect on the privilege that we have that we may not be aware of, and what we need to do to be open to and welcoming of others to participate in the bounty that we have here.
We did similar things, and then we also did an equity walk where staff walked through the building to see if the pictures on the walls, if the materials, everything represented our population. And then we also did some work around identity. You don't really think about your identity if you're part of the norm, but it does stand out a bit more when you are not part of the norm. And how do we help our students feel accepted, welcome, appreciated when they are not part of the larger norm. And so that's some of the work that we've done to expand the toolkits of teachers to be able to have those conversations.
Similarly at Thoreau and a little bit different, oftentimes, the students that we have been accustomed to servicing in special education have learning challenges that you can't see on the outside. With our population changing a bit, we've had to do some work around how we talk to kids about differences that are more obvious, and working with families on how do you address your children's questions about maybe a new classmate who has questions about a certain behavior or a certain appearance. So a lot of our work has been focused on creating a more inclusive environment for those students who we are increasing in number very heavily. Thanks. Questions for us?
That's great stuff. Questions around here?
Some of what you shared with us tonight, we were able to watch, and you were able to report over the course of the year. But to hear it all put together as a look back for the year is suggestive of just how far you've gone in carrying out what you planned in September. And the way all three of you speak about it is so very authentic. It's well, you're not the only one who's going to choke up tonight. So thank you. Thank you for the authenticity you bring to this kind of effort. It's very clear that this is more than an exercise. This is an affair of the heart on behalf of the kids, and it comes through from you as representatives of everybody who's pursuing this work. So thank you.
And we are representative of our staff. As Mike was saying, we stand on the shoulders of giants. They do all the great work, and often we get credit, just as we were saying the other day when Lori and I were in Boston. We are very fortunate to have the resources, the leadership of this team, and the hard work of our staffs to execute. So it does.
Tremendous support of our communities as well. We can't do it without them.
A question, is there anything, as you guys collaborated even more this year, were there things that jumped out as surprises to any of you in that? Either things that you were doing more differently than you realized, or more similarly, or?
I'll say one thing. I almost said it earlier when Dr. Hunter was speaking. One of my favorite things about this year, which I think is like when you, because I hear about what it's like, or I hear about things that are going on. But I'm rarely in the building, in your buildings, when there are kids there, and it's like you have your staff and everyone. So in our work collaborating around special education programming, there was a lot of, I'm gonna come over and put eyes on your student, and I wanna have a conversation with your family about what we might be able to offer them. And I'd like you to come and sit down and go over some data, or come just observe this kiddo and see if you think that it would be a good fit. Those days were like, the things that like professional collaboration are made of, because that was a really authentic, like instead of us talking in a vacuum about, I have this issue, can you help me out? It's like, we are gonna go in together and we're gonna, wrap our brains around what we can do best for that kid in real time, and try to make things happen for them, like sometimes like tomorrow. So on
a dime occasionally, I remember, yes.
So that stood out to me as.
I think there was a weekend between.
But things like that, where it's like, we're working together for the benefit of a child who, might not be yours right now, or might not be mine right now.
Started as mine, ended up as yours.
Could be, or could go the other way. So that was fantastic. I'd like to see more of that, because I think that's where we need to be have a district-wide person, have that district-wide feeling of accountability for the success of all kids. So it's not like, my Thoreau kids, they are my Thoreau kids, but they're our kids. So thinking that was.
Thanks. May I ask, Principal Young, you said that you're trying in well-being something different here? Can we know a little bit more about
for the screen?
You got to go to my, I don't remember the name, SSIS or something.
What it is, not for the abbreviation.
You'd have to go to my little slide that, and that program, I think it's SSIS or something. It has social emotional learning in there, and so it has many components. So there's one component where students can take a checklist or feedback,
and it's a teacher can do that as well. We're having the teachers start with that, and then we're looking at that data in relation to what we're seeing in those classrooms as well. So we're seeing if it's a valid tool, I guess, before we go school-wide.
At what grade level
Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. At what grade level might a student do self-reporting or participate in self-assessment?
Yeah, I would say upper elementary.
Yeah, okay.
Sometimes you'll have, younger elementary with smiley faces, they might do smiley or a frown or,
Okay.
You might get that basic, but for the most part, when they're a little more reflective, it's upstairs, or for me, it's upstairs, 3 through 5, yeah.
Okay.
It's a little more blatant with the kindergarten first grader who is either, expressing good behavior or I'm in the red zone again, I'm in the red zone again. It's a little more obvious.
That's your superintendent, not
It's a little more, it becomes more difficult, especially when they are performing well on the outside to figure out those students who are struggling in the upper grades. So it's most useful where you look.
And just back to your question earlier about a takeaway from this year, I think our alignment based upon our district goals has enabled us to have continuous conversations and support and collaboration. I think it's natural for any organization to begin to create a pocket just for yourself because there's something that's something that itch that you have to scratch. But regularly when we gather together, we return to what are we doing as a district in these separate ways. And it was wonderful, and there was a great deal of sharing. And it wasn't ownership of something great was happening in one building, it was shared by the others. So that feels really good, that it's a collaborative, positive, reinforcing relationship. It's not competitive, it's about what's good for kids and how we can support each other to deliver it. And that means, as teachers, sometimes you don't want to give up your kids.
Right.
But here, just by our work this year, when it made sense for a student to be introduced to a program in another building, and for us to speak with complete confidence that we believed that our colleagues would deliver on the promise, we did that, and we don't do that lightly.
A lot of trust.
A lot of trust.
Absolutely.
Great deal of trust.
I just want to tell you a little secret that when I prepared for this meeting and I read the 3 different presentations, because each one of you said a different presentation, I sat there and said to myself, it's one district. Why don't they work together? I'm very happy.
Very good. Well, that was going to be my comment in wrapping up, is that this is the first time I've seen you present all like this, and I think even just looking back at the year, the collaboration that has happened, I mean, it's what you're all talking about. It's amazing. It's palpable in the room and in what's going on in the district, and it is so just magical for the children, for the families.
Right.
And I think the short term tonight's proof of it, the fact that you went from, as you've all said, from walking in here tonight with 3 different presentations to on the spot, speaking of on the dime, combining them and doing them together speaks to how incredibly coordinated you already are. And the fact that our students are getting the benefit from that all year is just such a big value. So thank you all so much. This was wonderful to hear about.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
And I don't know, it's so nice.
Angel, are you going to stay in handbook?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Angel's going to do the handbook changes. They're not significant, but she'll just talk you through them so you can
Okay.
vote them after they.
Great,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay, so I'll be
Big
very
little
quick.
details.
These are very little details. Anytime that you saw the phrase peanut free, it is now allergy information because we're trying to have a universal approach to how we're managing whatever. Some of the allergies that we never thought we would see are coming in, so we have one approach for how we're going to manage an allergy situation regardless of what it is. So that language has changed. Your names and email addresses are now in the handbook.
I thank you.
We changed the Director of Special Education to the Director of Student Services to reflect that change. We are not requiring a physician's note for ibuprofen or for acetaminophen if a parent gives permission for us to administer acetaminophen or ibuprofen. We do not need a doctor's order to do that. However, we do need a doctor's order for any prescription medication. So we wanted to make that crystal clear. We keep having to send bottles back saying we need a doctor to tell us that we need to give this during the day. Again, we updated the document and the whole section actually on managing student allergies with guidance from the Massachusetts Department of Education, with guidance that they have on managing life-threatening food allergies in schools. We are now asking parents and putting the responsibility on them to inform the nurse if there is an allergy, no longer the principals.
Oh, really?
Yes, I know.
Good.
That's great. And we are also adding that children are allowed to be on the bus. That is a new bus rule. And those are your changes to the handbook.
All right. There you go. Wonderful. Any questions from anyone?
No, thank you.
Thank you so
That's
much.
great. Thank you.
Attention to it.
Okay.
Okay. Justin, are you ready? Have you been waiting long enough?
He's been to a dance.
I know. Our first question is going to be, how was the 8th grade dance?
Well, as I was leaving, I told one boy where I was going, and he told me that he dared me to wear the sunglasses that they gave out tonight. So Jackson, this is for you.
I want to say it's cool now.
Class
I
of
love it.
2023, I should give this to Mike.
No, those are great.
Oh, dear.
Okay, so we're doing handbook changes first.
Handbook changes first, okay.
Okay. That's small. There we go. Thank you.
Thanks.
So these are in no particular order. We had our school advisory council meeting, I believe, on May 16th, and just some motions were made to change some of the rules and to our focus as a group. The Concord Middle School School Advisory Council, just as a reminder, is a collection of teachers, faculty, community members from both buildings, and students. This is our second year where we have students a part of the body as well. The first motion was to accept the following policy change. It has to do with interscholastic sports. So MIAA is rather silent when it comes to middle school sports, even the interscholastic sports. So the first motion we had was students who serve an in-school suspension will not be allowed to participate in any interscholastic game or practice on the days of the suspension. These students will not be eligible to play in the next game following the suspension. Could just go through all of them? Okay. Second, we had a motion for students who serve an out-of-school suspension will not be allowed to participate in any interscholastic sport or practice on the days of the suspension. Is this the same one? These students will not be eligible to play in the next 2 games following the suspension. I think the first one was on practices, and this one's on games. What's that?
First one was in school, this one is
And one
out
game.
of school, right?
Yep.
Okay.
1 game and 2 games.
Yep. The third is a motion to, this was a challenge, this came from the challenge, so the challenge success team visited the school advisory council, and this motion was from the challenge success group. It's a motion to not have any more than 2 major assessments in a day, and teachers, we're giving the autonomy to teachers to define assessments and to work with the team leaders and the house leaders on that one. Then we are still with challenge success. We made a motion for at least 1 homework-free weekend. We really had a chance to connect with our high school challenge success team and make sure that there was some unity and cooperation with both groups. And then we went to the work that was done last year with our school advisory council, where we have a rubric where each we have a collection of about 19 very common rules and where the consequences might be for each rule. So here's a proposed, actually before we get to that one, I'm sorry, here's a proposed change in honor roll and principals list. So the red is a change. Principals list an average of all grades of an A- or above with no grade below B. as defined by Aspen grade scales 83 to 86, and honors an average of all grades B- or above with no grade below a C. And then here's where the rubric was just changed a little this year. We made a motion to change in consequences for the violation of acceptable use policy. Proposals are in red. So the rules on the left, and this is what we also put in our homework agenda as well. And it was a year ago where the School Advisory Council, we came to this group and we talked about just making clear consequences, especially with the two buildings, and making sure there's consistency in rules and consequences as well. I was, just a quick reflection, I was taken back at how often students would cite that, especially again, it was in their own homework agenda, and the PTG was kind enough to give a homework agenda book to each student. So we have some proposed changes in red for a violation of acceptable use policy, and we have some changes in red for the threats, harassment, sexual harassment, bullying, racial slurs, and hate. Hate language, you just changed the first consequence and second consequence and third consequence to all out-of-school consequences. Questions?
I know the hour's late, but can you give us an example of what two major assessments colliding in one day would look like? What kind of assessments are major? I know you haven't fully defined them, but...
Yeah. You know, that was, so that whole policy was something we really tried to establish a dichotomy between practice and policy. Challenge success, I think, and this will be highlighted in our an update on the school improvement plan, was very active and really accomplished a lot this year. And they brought forward to, in a faculty meeting, I believe the April faculty meeting, a lot of research-based suggestions and changes in practice. But we also wanted to make sure that our handbook also defines who we are as a community as well. So that one went from practice to policy, policy to practice. We landed on policy. And we're really looking at like a long-term project that would count as a major assessment, a quiz, a test, you know, things coming together to collide. If we're going to define ourselves as a middle school, and if we're going to really honor the time that all the teachers on a team come together, then part of the communication should be, you know, okay, for the sake of the science exam that's coming up, you know, let's make sure that's the only thing that's going to happen.
I apologize, I completely misunderstood it. I thought this was a diagnostic kind of exercise.
No, we'll get to that.
But actually,
Okay.
it's very interesting because when I made the question to Principal Mastrulo, he actually said it's in the practice, it's very difficult to coordinate between the department. How do you actually get to coordinate between teachers and departments? When do they give quizzes and when not? Maybe it's something you can export to other schools here.
Yeah, well, I think you're defining a difference in organization between a middle school and a high school. And in a high school, you know, your collaboration between the grade level teachers might not be the capacity of the master schedule just may not offer that. Whereas our master schedule, in fact, a master schedule that we just redefined and redid, offers even more collaboration time between the grade level teachers. My departments come together more after school on early release Tuesdays. So we're looking at grade level teachers for the first time ever all being in the same building, which, you know, I paused there for a reason. Effects from the crowd.
Hallelujah.
And they all have common planning time. They all have common prep time, pretty much the same thing. And they all have meetings coming together. So when they come together, looking at this proposal of a policy, they talk about the assessments that are upcoming in their subject area. And you know, some can say, and certainly the challenge success groups, you know, has shared the research about, you know, looking at student stress, you know, and striking a balance. But challenge success is also about engagement. And when you're talking about engagement, then, teachers should come together to talk about, listen, I don't want anything else around this English project, because that's how much I want my students engaged. It shouldn't be an input-output kind of thing. So that's where we're trying to bring the conversation as well.
Any questions? I just want to say a quick thank you for taking some of that challenge success stuff and really integrating it into this real time, because that's really valuable work, and to get it to a point of policy handbook changes already is great. It's nice to see that progress.
Yeah, I think whenever you bring together a committee, you want to have a clear charge to that committee. But you also want to make sure that that committee brings itself into what's called organization learning. And you want to make sure that well past your time, there are things that you did that help define the community that's going to live on. And sometimes that, living on happens through policy and through handbooks.
Yeah. Yep. Great. Any other questions on the handbooks? Okay. Now we get to hear about all the great stuff you did this year.
Yes. Slide 59.
Jumping right into the middle.
Okay.
If you use this slide, it will be history.
Exactly.
That's right.
Exactly.
I don't know who will.
Okay. So this is the best view.
You can cherish.
Over the middle school.
Not to scale.
Yeah. Dropping some water. Yeah, I don't know why Peabody looks like
Peabody
it's about
looks
to devour
Godzilla.
something. Good for Peabody.
Yeah, exactly.
It's that small child.
Yeah.
That's right.
All right. Wow. Oh,
We're gonna debate.
effect. Okay, so what I've tried to do here, just for the sake of being succinct, is on the left you have our school improvement initiatives, and on the right we have some progress. And this was really taken from the district strategic plan as well. So the first initiative, establish a middle school RTI tiered levels of support, a data team that would oversee RTI tiered levels of support at the middle school. So here's some just quick snippets of things we accomplished. The first one, what seems a little silly, it was important, I felt, and the leadership team felt, to really just create a space. And if you know anything about the middle school, you know that space is hard to come by. So a quick link to where it says see the picture. We were able to create space in Sanborn. This, believe it or not, was the district's supply closet for, this is where the food service equipment came to die. It's a room right off the Sanborn Servery and right off
I wish you had it
the
before and after.
cafeteria.
I know.
Yeah, I should have.
We should have.
This is our RTI data room. So this is not a room that students have access to. This is a locked room at all times. Only adults have access to it, and our RTI team has access to it. Karen Baker, I don't see your water bottle. It's still in there
I
sometimes.
talked to my guy left.
The adults remind me that it's always locked. If you see the boards here, these are actual pictures of our students. So all of our students are actually in different tiers of RTI. And it's a very visual representation, especially where we're going through this renaissance of being two buildings coming to one. Because it's important that our RTI team, our data team, is focused on an entire school. So the interventions, you can't see this, but our interventions that are being offered are all right here and broken up into the different tiers. And this, if you Google RTI, you get a sense of what percentage of your students should be in each tier. And this was a wonderful audit of what we're already doing. And the middle school is really just lacking kind of a body to oversee it all. And that's probably one of the biggest accomplishments. that we had, this year in 1.1. 1.2 explores special education programs at the middle school services to meet the needs of all middle school students. The middle school special education department provides the direct services, creating new programs. We presented as group. I don't remember.
Not yet.
Yeah, we presented almost everywhere.
Yeah, you've done enough.
So we had a presentation, if you want to just click on the presentation notes. We had a presentation that I'm not going to make right now, that was made throughout the district. All elementary schools, we had a parent night. It was made to the district leadership team, so the high school received the presentation, all the elementary schools, and we just were redefining how we're doing special education. We're redefining everything.
Yes.
Honestly. So direct services and the special education programming, the new SEL program that we brought online, that's going to be in both buildings, a 6th grade program and a 8th grade program, and then a language-based as well. I think you might have skipped it. Go back. Here we go. Establish a middle school master schedule steering committee. So as I mentioned before, we have a new master schedule in both buildings. And the reconfiguration did a lot of this, but we're really just making, we want to be quite clear and deliberate that students receive the same experience, and that, what's happened very quietly the last few years where, a Peabody student might just have a different experience than a Sanborn student. And that's not what Concord Middle School is supposed to bring to our families and to our students.
I think it's worth noting the middle school schedule has a historic dysfunction. Fair word.
Understatement.
Understatement. So to really be at a place where in hand right now, and for the last couple of months almost, Justin's had a schedule that we're to the point now he's got kids placed in it, the teachers have seen it, like we're all going off to the summer in a very different place. No big catastrophes to happen this August like have happened in the past. It's just completely different.
Different summer.
Yeah. So I mean, we've got to give him and his team a huge amount of kudos because to get ahead of that means he started in November.
Yeah. Wow.
So we're where we need to be, which is great.
Moving on to well-being, we mentioned earlier challenge success. We also had a mindfulness steering committee as well. I think the most powerful thing, and it was named about 5 hours ago in a presentation today. Students are so active and their voices are so active in most of these committees and teams that have been assembled. The challenge success team, the students, really, giving us pause this year, and, really just making sure that we're not just going with a cliche of, having too much homework and, they were very thoughtful, and, that was very powerful. We also had a rethinking the middle school one-to-one committee that's going to head into its second year. So we're really looking at the purpose of the laptops and how it may be promoting higher level learning, and we're making sure that these laptops, are really used for that reason, not just used for a Google form, as much as we can take pride in using the Google Suite. Google form is a worksheet. And it's really promoting those higher level learnings, the Bloom's taxonomy, the creating, the iMovie, that not all districts have that opportunity to create in that way. Improved practices to ease the 5th grade to 6th grade transition and the 8th to 9th grade transitions, working with both the elementary schools and CCHS and Carlisle Middle School as well. I would say, to be very honest, that transition from the 5th to 6th is one that I think we've done a pretty good job in focusing on, and I think we need, there's some work to be done with that 8th to 9th. And I think Mike can name that as well, and we're looking forward to that partnership next year as well. Expanding home base, which is our advisory program and our anti-bullying curriculum with state alignment. I sat with Kristen Herbert today. We talked about such a pride that we have in this homegrown advisory program that we have. It's grassroots, it's innovation at its best, but we're still looking for a solid anchor that is a research-based program. That, and I'm hopeful this will never happen, but when the state, says to me as principal, here's a bullying concern that came to our level, they audit us and they ask of us, what's in your health curriculum, what's in your wellness curriculum, what's in, if you have one, an advisory program. So we're still working on that as well. Like the high school, we had implemented PAIR. We only get to a place where all the staff at the middle school were trained in PAIR. We have a license for every student, and we're going to give that assessment in the early fall. But we are pretty proud that in that same RTI room that you saw, we had people from McLean Hospital, who came in to train us in PAIR in what's called the HSA. Moving right along, the inclusive culture. We have a CMS Allies adult group that has been around for a number of years. We formed a student group last year of students focusing on making the middle school and the district cultural, with a focus of cultural proficiency. Bringing that adult group together with the student group has been very powerful. And the 3.2 is probably one of the more powerful things that we did this year. Actually, I guess I'm on 3.3, and it was a presentation to this group a couple months ago with the partnership that we did with CC and the junior at CC, who brought to the district the work that we did with Boston Celtics and the Playbook Initiative. I'm really excited. I think I may have shared this, but it bears repeating. That that was one day of training. It was a 4-hour training that we brought 30 students to, and we're looking to do that training a minimum 4 times. We're looking at a 5th date next year. So we're going to bring in 30 students at a time 4 or 5 times next year. And what we're looking to do is cycle through, have a couple common people who lead all 4 or 5, but also bring in a former CMS student, somebody from the district, who can help sit with our students and really, just build the capacity of, knowing how to navigate very difficult social situations that, quite honestly, some adults struggle with as well. Right at our last slide. Okay, innovative environment. We reconfigured, all work.
Say no more. Just one other little thing.
Yes. And, we're so grateful. We had a faculty meeting that Lori was at today. We talked about, the heavy lifting, and that is absolutely upon, that still needs to be done in the reconfiguration with the actual move. And we're doing all of this for the sake of the present and making sure that we are very much focused, on that ghost of CMS present and the students who are coming in, and the students who are in 4th grade, and the students who are going up to 8th grade. I'll be very candid with all of you. The only thing that I struggled with during the process, the very long process of when I was interviewed and had all the forums, was there was a tiny bit of energy saying, why would you do anything to the middle school if our goal is to build a new middle school? And I really struggled in that space. And I remember challenging a certain individual on that, who was very much a part of the process of, offering me a job, quite frankly, because I was really worried that we were sacrificing our present with the goals that we had of the future. So, we're just so proud at the middle school. The work that was done by the middle school teachers, this past year was beyond anything that I would ever think I would ask a staff to do. And I think, in reflecting on that, I think I will never ask the staff to do as much work as we've asked them to do. But I think we also learned as we went through how to rebuild the trust with the fact that, you know, now the work of the summer becomes work of follow-through. And making sure that when teachers and students arrive back in late August, you know, they see a fresh coat of paint, they see new rugs, they see new technology. And if they hear us talking about a new building, excitement in that voice, hopefully they won't be sad that they're going to miss it. Because they're going to look around and hopefully see conditions that surround themselves that have just improved. And a quality of learning and quality of life that is just going to be better when we open those doors in August.
Awesome.
You're going to do a special ceremony moving 7 minutes back this
You know?
summer?
Funny you asked that. I had like 18 ideas, including, I hate to share an idea I didn't do, but you know, including offering students what would they do with the 7 minutes.
Right.
You know, like they all had to propose a 7-minute like project or something.
You were moving a time zone in the world. It's like generations.
And you didn't even put that as an accomplishment.
20 years of a time zone.
A time zone.
One day you get up in the morning and it doesn't exist.
Who knew you could create it to start with? I've had people say, what are you gonna call it? I'm like, the real time.
just time.
It's so fascinating how entrenched it is.
I mean, all those people that thought that the United States had only 4 time zones, not
Right.
5.
Oh, 5.
Maybe this is when we start to look at unlearning. Right?
Yeah.
The staff are going through the stages of grief. At first they were excited, now they're like sad, and then they get angry. And it's like, it's just Sanborn time, folks. We'll be okay.
Just about that. That's so funny.
Yeah.
Well, this is more than impressive.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear. I hope you come back in the fall after you've recovered. And tell us how this is all going, because I think it's going to be so interesting to hear how things
Yeah.
change for
Yeah.
the staff.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
having all the 6th graders together is going to be amazing in the 7th and 8th graders. But 6th graders, I would think, is it's going to be a game changer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, what we can't lose sight of, and I shared this at one of our safety meetings, is that what we call it? So we have monthly or bi-monthly safety meetings with police and fire. And, you know, the percentage of the kids, you know, 100% of them won't know the PB building, you know, and then we have something like, you know, a little less than half aren't going to know the Sanborn building.
Right. Yeah.
And that's pretty remarkable, you know, and when you talk about transitioning in and focusing that transition and making sure that they settle and, you know, norming out, you know, the buildings and the expectations, it's going to take a little time. It's going to take a little time.
You know, just one more example of the collaboration. I mean, Jared's office has taken over all of the physical work to be done this summer, which is no short order, plus the other capital projects, and been over there. Very hands-on, meeting with vendors, meeting with contractors, getting the timelines together in connection with the people we have here. But it's, you know, another example of just like everybody in the same space moving forward. And that was noted by the staff, that Jared's presence at the middle school was different and noteworthy, that the central office was reaching out and supporting them. So
That's great.
good stuff.
Are you having any summer school at the middle school?
We put everything in Alcott. The middle school
I
is
was gonna say.
closed off to everyone
Okay, good.
beginning Tuesday.
Yeah. All right. Other questions from committee members? I had one. Just a small question. You mentioned next year for the Celtics initiative, growing it so much. How do you plan to grow participation among students? Were there that many already who wanted to participate and you had to cut it down, or are you going to encourage more to participate?
Yeah, we had over 140 students who were interested.
Oh, that's right.
So we were only able to choose 30.
Okay.
You know, the Boston Celtics.
Wow, so the demand is there.
Yeah.
That's really
You know, the Celtics were so kind, you know, and I think I offered this in the presentation, you know, to kind of exploit them, you know, exploit, you know, just the coolness
Right.
of the Celtics and the players, and so there may have been a part of it was that, but then I think the experience that they had, the most powerful thing that a student said to me at the end of those 4 hours, and I'll never forget this, is she said to me, "This is what school should be."
Wow.
And she's so right.
Yeah.
You know, she's so right, you know, and I think that's where we want to go as a school as well. So, you know, something's quite, you know, enticing when you just say or confirm with the students, yeah, you won't be going to classes those 4 hours.
Yeah.
And then they come and they have a different experience, and then they realize what they learned may have been more powerful than had they just attended classes that day.
That's great. Well, can I just wrap up with a comment again? And it's interesting, this is only, as I was listening to you speak, I found that I was finding several parallels to what we said about Lori earlier. And I know you were off dancing the night away at the 8th grade dance, but a few of the things that we talked about when we were talking about Lori, 3 of them stuck out to me here is focus on students, obviously, building trust, and filling in. And I'll just mention each of those. What I mean, focus on students, it's clear in everything you do, but when you're talking about the reconfiguration and the fact that it's worth it to go through all of this even for a few years, that to me speaks to a focus on all students, because there are students coming through now and for the next several years for whom this is their middle school experience. And the dedication that you have put into making this reconfiguration happen for those students really speaks to that focus on all of the students, and it shines through, and it's so important here. And as we said about Lori, we asked her to do a lot of trust building when she came in, and we asked the same of you, and it was a tall order. And the trust that you've built in that building is incredible, and the fact that you were able to ask a staff to do more than you ever thought you would be able to ask a staff to do after 2 years in that building speaks so much to what you've done since you came in. So that's I think something that deserves notice. And as we said about Lori, there have been unexpected challenges and gaps, and we know that you have had to fill in and play the role of multiple people for part of this year. And to be doing that as a baseline, that's enough to add already. And then you add a reconfiguration, planning for a new building, new schedules. I mean, all of these things that you're talking about that would all be normally the big extra thing that a principal did, right? Well, you've done 4 or 5 big extra things. And so I just want to note that you have gone above and beyond even.
Right.
And
some of those things could just not happen.
Right,
Which would have
right.
been.
And nobody could have said that was supposed to happen and he didn't do it, but it wouldn't have been the best for the students that you've provided. So I just want to put that out there and really thank you, because what you have put in and given us all this year is truly beyond words.
Well, thank you for that.
Yep. It's
No,
true.
thank you for that.
Yes. Thank you from all of us.
Yep.
Well,
Definitely.
Yep. And then
I say it
we
to a
can
long
let you
time,
go.
so I'm not gonna say it.
I know. And you should be able to go home and go to bed now.
yes.
Yeah, ready for
So
2 graduations
enjoy.
tomorrow.
Exactly.
It'll be down to 1 next year.
Yeah, well, that's the goal.
Well, now you'll have 6th grade graduation at 8th grade.
No.
No,
Wait.
that wasn't in there, sorry.
You just stopped him in his tracks.
All right.
Okay, middle school building project update. So I can do a quick update first, obviously. The election question, the ballot question passed, which was our big good news. I'll just do a quick update on the building committee, which is that it has been completely seated, and we're working already to schedule the first meeting. Since there isn't a chair, there's obviously this interim time, there isn't a chair yet, so Susan Bates from the select board and I are basically working in tandem to kind of get it going, so that the select board and school committee are just kind of teeing it off. We're working on a date and an agenda to get it moving. And then obviously at the beginning, the committee itself will elect chair or co-chairs and move on from there. But it's great progress, and we're starting to look at what's going to be done. And then if I could bump it over to Jared and ask you to give us just a little bit of an overview of what's going to happen, short term and over this funding phase, that would be great.
Sure. So because we're not going through the MSBA process, we have a little bit more freedom. But I think we'll recommend that we sort of follow the MSBA process. The first thing we need to do is start to look at OPM services. Just reviewing some of the things online, the first thing that this committee would do is they would select a selection committee as sort of a subcommittee of the building committee to start looking at OPM RFSs, which is requests for services. That will be pretty much the first thing that they would be looking at. Also, I think the committee would assign a procurement administrator, someone with an MCPPO certified, which is for procurement. And then I think the committee would then, this committee would start looking at determine the scope of services. There's a broad thing, a number of broad things in the RFS, and this committee would look into that. But I think that is the number one thing that we need to do. We need to get an OPM on who can guide us through the process and then guide us through the design process. Sorry, I lost my train of thought.
No, there are a lot of moving pieces to this.
Is the procurement office person somebody from within?
Yes, so it'll be someone, I don't know how many people in the committee have their MCPPO. I do.
I'm pretty sure I might have just volunteered for that role, Jared.
So,
thanks for being our procurement officer in advance.
But the MSBA has a number of templates out there. I sent something out to my listserv of business managers saying if there's going to be, if anyone has any templates that did not use MSBA services. I don't think
they're going to shoot you. Yeah, I know, exactly.
I know, they really are. I don't think anyone, they're going to laugh at me and say, only,
Now, we know a couple districts we can reach out to if you don't get a response.
So,
What's the typical timeline?
You know what, I'm not
between the
selection.
committee. Well, the committee's starting up and then getting out an RFS.
Yeah.
Right. Is it like a month or 3 months?
No, well, it could be a month. Depends how quickly this committee just gets on the RFP. So we put together in the business office a template with a number of questions that need to be answered by the committee. So we at least have a head start on what needs to be done and what needs to be discussed. But there are a number of different things that need to be discussed before we even get it out on the street. I don't know the timetable. I'd like to say before the start of school. But
I hope so.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah, I think
certainly
we have to find that balance of reasonable and efficient, because one of our hopes was to keep it moving along.
Yeah.
Without MSBA, we don't have their constraints to work with. So
Right.
I think that'll be a lot of what the first meeting is about, probably, in terms of what's a realistic timeframe.
Yeah.
Good.
we have a lot of freedoms by not
Yeah, we
going
do.
through them. We don't have to have them review it and hold it up.
And wait for their meetings.
Yeah, which is great, which is one of the reasons we're hoping we can move it all along quickly.
Yeah, this is the fun part.
I know, exactly.
Remind me who are our reps today?
Court and I are the reps to the building committee from here. Yep.
Fun.
I think it will be, actually. Yeah, any other?
Any committee with 16 people must be fun.
Right. That's right.
All right.
Any other questions on the building?
No, thank you.
Okay. Then let's get on to our action items and keep moving. I'm not seeing my links, so I'm just gonna let you all make the motions.
I make a motion that the Concord School Committee vote to approve the proposed changes to the 2019-2020 K-5 and CMS handbooks.
Oh.
Do the contract, no?
Oops.
This is different, what Jared passed was different
What you're,
Okay.
okay,
Yeah.
He,
Yeah, so
he
we're on
just did him, we're actually on A, the CTA contract first, but.
Right.
instead
So Jared
of-
did
have a special
pass out.
motion?
Is it-
He already made the motion, we can do that.
Okay, we'll do that one.
Right.
So to approve the K-5 and CMS
Second.
handbooks. Any further discussion on that one?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that one's done.
I have
Let's go back to the contract.
I
Do you
the-
have
the
wording?
language for the
Okay.
contract. So there are basically two motions here to approve the contract. One is basically a one-year contract and then an MOA to approve the three-year contract. So first motion, that the Concord Public School Committee vote to approve a one-year contract for school year 2019 to 2020 with the Concord Teachers Association, including a 2.5% cost of living salary increase for steps 1 through 15 and a 2 3/4 increase for step 16.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion of this?
Thanks to the entire team for working on this.
Yes.
Yes, and as we mentioned before, to Joanna also, who continued working on it even after her time on the school committee. And thank you, Wally and Lori and Jared for all the time on this. Then all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and there's a second motion to go along with it?
The Concord Public School Committee vote to approve a three-year contract for school years 2020 to 2021, 2021 to 2022, and 2022 to 2023. The Concord Teachers Association, which includes COLA to be negotiated.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion on that one? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Can I just make a
Passed it.
comment?
Yes.
This was quite a process, and hats off to everybody who was involved. We did something called interest-based bargaining, which we agreed to do collectively after doing 8 hours of training to know what we were agreeing to do. And I don't know, we probably spent 30 to 40 hours together, more, not including the 8, so let's call it 60. It was, I think, a great experience for all of us. And I was certainly happy to be involved with it, but it was a major commitment of the people that were involved. And I think that we should recognize the fact that not only us, but all of the faculty members who are on the negotiating team took that time and made that effort to come to what I think is a contract we would not have come to in a traditional bargaining sense. Thank
Many
you.
thanks to
And
all
Dan,
involved.
Thanks for passing it.
Absolutely.
Another motion?
Another motion?
That the Concord School Committee vote to approve the request of Ms. Fanny Pfaffenbach to enroll her child in the Concord Public Schools and the tuition will be waived.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Any discussion on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And one more vote. Do I have a motion about books?
Second, we have to get there.
The Concord School Committee vote to surplus books at the Alcott School Library.
So moved. Or second?
Second.
Sorry.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Votes all carry.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And I assume there are none opposed. Thank you very much to everyone.
Thank you.
Well done.